Welcome to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Pitch to McNeil. He swings and drills one down the right field line toward the wall. Gone! Right over the wall down the right field line. It's 335 to right. That one just sailed over the 8-foot-high wall.
0-2 pitch. Hit in the air well, left field, long run back to the fence. Looks up and gone. On an 0-2 pitch, Margot connects for his 4th of the year. And like that, the Twins are up now, 2-0.
There goes Fraley running here, and Marte blasts one to right field, well hit and deep. Back goes Sanchez. He leaps at the wall. It's gone. Just barely got it over the outstretched glove of Jesus Sanchez, leaping at the top of the wall. But it's a 2-run home run for Noelvi Marte.
2-0 is in the air, and it's left center field and deep. Back to the wall it goes, and it's a pitch home run for Romy Gonzalez, and the Red Sox have broken an open. They lead at 8-2 on a 2-0 pitch. Romy drives it.
The 3-1. Smith swings. It's a high drive to right. That ball's back. It is out of here. Good night. Josh Smith, the walk-off homer.
Morning, welcome into Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. That's DB.
Maybe there's a problem with the mic.
I'm Ravi.
I'll
Lulla.
check it later.
Okay.
I still think it's Ravi.
That's Shane Schiller. How is it? I just am talking.
I don't know.
How would it be me?
Because you can hear it. I would just wait a second. But that's just.
I did wait. It sounded like it went on.
Well, you sound a lot like my wife making excuses. If you wait another 3 seconds.
How long would you like me to wait?
Till you can hear yourself. It's pretty easy. You don't ask me anything else about it. Just wait till you can hear yourself, and then I think you can, because you know when you can hear the audio, right?
I can hear like the audio from like he's playing. Like
I'm
the
talking
intro,
about
or what do you mean?
I'm talking about when you know that you're going to be able to hear yourself.
Oh, I can't hear anything until I talk, and it either comes to the headphones or it doesn't. Unless there might be like a thing that I'm not aware of.
Okay.
I'm not denying that, but as far as I can tell when Shane turns his mic on, like I hear a little feedback.
You hear a little click?
I don't hear a click.
No, I was talking to Shane.
Oh,
maybe you hear a little click.
A little heavy breathing.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
I try and avoid the heavy breathing as much as possible.
Yeah,
gives the wrong vibes.
Well,
it's not that kind of show.
Hey, speaking of which, Shane, have your neighbors invited you over lately? How have they been? I know they hooked you up with a little juice. Or you guys hanging out?
We haven't had brisket for a while, so
haven't been over.
Haven't had brisket for about a week or so.
Are they roughly your age, older, younger?
Oh, they're younger.
Yeah, they're just like, hey, let's bring the old guy over. We feel bad. Or are you? Just
we were talking
cool?
about age last night, and they're like, They were like, we
had no idea you were.
I was gonna say, did they think you were a lot younger?
Yeah, they thought I was about their age.
I told you if a long time, like about 7-8 years ago, when you were still smoking, if you didn't smoke, you could easily pass for a little kid trick or treating.
Oh, that would be great.
They just would be like, why does this guy smell like Marlboro Reds? But
I don't smoke Marlboro Reds.
I mean, you could have easily said trick or treat.
He'd have to shave the beard a little bit now.
Yeah, he was clean faced for a while. Remember that? Now it's like, ooh, need to let that grow back.
You know, all those kids are vaping these days. He could probably still pass for like 14.
Yeah, I'm afraid to vape like I am. I'm afraid of vaping like this is so sad. Watching Freddie Freeman's presser. I read you the story about his little dude.
Yeah.
Look at him. It's tough. Wow. So it'll be that and aspartame. Vaping and aspartame. And like 10 years, people are going to be like, whoa, that substitute thing.
Yeah, I'm going to take my chances with aspartame, but yeah.
Are you an aspartame guy?
Well, I mean, it's in all the diet sodas, so.
Yeah. That would be one of those things. They caught Olean and some other variations of that relatively early.
Yeah.
But I'm worried about like vaping and
the vaping is pretty they've already figured out like it's pretty bad for you.
Isn't it? Is it more than your enamel, or is it like something internal?
So yeah, it's with the lungs. It causes some pretty serious lung issues. I'm not a doctor, so I'm not going to pretend I know the specifics.
Wait, you're not a doctor?
No, I mean I know a lot of people who look like me are, but usually those are cardiologists.
Shane, how are your lungs doing?
I'm just doing like the old man walk.
Somebody intimated
don't do that.
the other day that he acted as though he was out of shape. I was like, because he was breathing heavy at the press conference. I'm like, if anything, he's in better shape.
Yeah, I think he slimmed down a little bit.
Yeah, he's down. So he's down some
and
LBs.
you know, you see him out there, like running stadium stairs and stuff. Like,
and a lot of times he'll work out up until the last millisecond.
Yeah,
like you'll see him trot in when that horn gets ready to sound for pre-practice, and he's just coming back from working out. Or if there's downtime, did you like the note? Do you read Keith's notes that he sends to the media about pressers?
I don't get those.
So there's like there's time in between when they'll get to the podium and when practice is done, and a lot of times in between there he'll get something done.
Yeah, he's a pretty active guy.
Tries to. Now I know he strikes me as the type of dude that brushes teeth in the bathroom or like on the toilet. You know what I mean? Like there's give yourself another 3 or 4 minutes to get that in.
I don't open my mouth while I'm on the toilet for any reason.
You hold your breath.
Well, no, you breathe through your nose, so I don't have to. You know what I mean? Like I don't generally breathe through my mouth. I'm a nose breather.
Yeah, are you really?
Well, you're supposed to breathe through your nose.
Well, I understand supposed to, but there's.
I mean,
I'd say 1 out of every 2 people you see is a mouth breather.
Unless I'm like theoretically, like literally.
I think you have to make a conscious effort to not open your mouth.
I don't know if I'm. Yeah, I don't know.
You just naturally walk around with your mouth closed.
I mean, I try not to walk around with my mouth open, like agape. Like
he explains it how he knows how to explain
that.
it.
To not be a mouth breather, I think would be a very, very conscious effort.
Oh, I don't know. I just do it
for sure.
Yeah,
I want no part of the poop particles in my mouth. Like, so I just keep those closed. Keep that closed up. I don't know. I don't understand people like eat in the bathrooms.
Yeah.
Or people like bring food into a bathroom. I'm not doing any of that.
When we got on the road to go to Indianapolis and we stopped at the gas station across the way from the rental car place.
Yeah.
I asked if I could leave I said, hey, I just got to wash my hands real quick. Can I leave my Yeti here?
Yeah, I'm not taking
And the dude kind of looked at me like, yeah. I don't know why. Listen, it's just me. It's kind of weird.
I'm like that too. I'm not taking that in the bathroom.
Well, it's not like, I mean, if we're being honest, it's not like once you go into the bathroom versus being in just like here, like all of a sudden particles are more like to cling to your like.
Yeah, the door is a magical barrier to the bathroom.
It's like, ooh, bathroom. Let's get a little more clingy.
Yeah, it's like, well,
I think
they're more prevalent. Do you? Yeah,
like
I mean, it's
like concentrated.
Yeah, well, more concentrated.
Do you feel like when you open a bathroom at a public place, you're just like wading through thicker air?
You're just inundated with poop particles.
That's trickle down effect.
No, it's like when you like blow your nose, right? It's not like like Kleenexes aren't magic, but a physical barrier helps.
Okay,
you know what I'm saying? So you get the particles. There's still going to be some like escaping out there, but the door helps block them.
Yeah. Okay.
Was
that Coach Mack? Was that Coach McGuire? How good did he look the other night?
Him and Corey Campbell both look like
Coach McGuire still looks like I guarantee you he gets when he's out of town he gets carded. When he's anywhere but here and in Texas he gets ID'd.
Yeah, that probably makes sense.
God, he looks
young. He's young. He looks young.
Way young.
I mean, because he's what, 25?
Gosh, either just turned or going to be.
Yeah. So I mean, I think a lot of 25-year-olds would get carded still.
Yeah, that staff was their juice was at a high level on Saturday. They really like this team.
Did you think they held anything back?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
In like what they were doing, or like what do you think they held back?
Well, I just think they kept it very, very basic. I don't think anybody cares about like the drills. Like they're not new and novel, but it's not like in team. they were doing anything other than basic concepts.
Okay, like so the play calling, whatever there was. Yeah. But I mean, in general, for a practice that early, it probably wasn't that much different.
No.
Than what you would see without a public there.
No, that format.
Yeah.
That's how they practice.
Pretty typical.
Yep.
Usually it's a little more spread out though, because you're not in the stadium.
Yeah, you have a lot more space.
Yeah.
Like you can, and I felt like the shuffling around was a little different.
Mm-hmm.
But outside of that,
seemed like maybe a little slower. Like the transitions weren't quite as quick.
Although he wasn't happy about a couple of them.
Yeah, he made them know about it.
Yeah, stop walking.
And then they kept walking. So then they started running.
Yeah, I would have. So I'm a day like that. You got to bring your own juice because it's been a long day. Now they got to sleep in a little bit.
Yeah,
I think by like an hour. And but you're not going until 6:30. You got to remember though, their body's at like peak testosterone drop in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
So you kind of staggered that, and you're waiting around, and then you got your meetings, and like the schedule was kind of backwards. So I felt like for what it was, the energy level was good. It wasn't what I've seen it before in the past, but it's also, as guys will tell you, that's like the magical day.
Mm-hmm.
Like day 3 or 4 is like the newness is worn off. You're starting to settle into a routine, and you know, it could or could not have been a pad day.
Mm-hmm.
So like it'll ramp up again in like a day or so, then it'll taper, and then you just have to get ready for the season. But that's kind of how it works generally.
So it's like a couple days, no pads, ramping up to pads.
Yeah.
And they just keep going through that cycle.
Yeah. And then they'll probably dictate when they want to give them a no pad. Because I still think I changed the absolute worst person to ask. I think padded practices, even once you can put pads on, are capped.
Yeah, I think that's correct.
So
they'll go.
They'll use all the padded practice days. It just depends on, what you're trying to accomplish that day.
So they'll go from, let's say, because they were in full on Saturday.
No,
half rack, right? Because they weren't wearing the. So you'll go from like
which I think are the worst.
Like half rack days.
I would be curious to see what other players think. I'm not a half rack guy.
Yeah.
Just not. Even I got to the point, and I told this to our guys at high school. We have some guys that are like that. Like they'll put on the inserts, and just roll them just to keep stuff off your thighs.
Yeah.
But I think you either go none or full. In just my opinion.
What's the logic between going half rack just a little lighter on them, or what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Your legs, now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you don't feel better.
Yeah.
It's just as a coach, I'd be curious to get other thoughts. I don't like, you're kind of in no man's land.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Are we going hard? Like, that's why I think tempo, like we do red, green, yellow.
Yeah.
And, through contact, wrap up, stop moment, like they all have a thing. And so, but we seldom say, do this because you're in this. Because most times people don't get it. How many guys you see get taken to the ground the other night? Yeah, I could
more
see
than I would have
right.
thought.
I could see where you would have thought it was.
Because I was standing, when I was early, I was standing next to him because I was down on the other side with the media. And I'm like, okay, they're not wearing leg pads. And then I start seeing it and I'm like, oh, they're tackling guys to the ground though. I was like, why would you do that if you're not in full gear?
Yeah.
And so that's where I was kind of confused, if I'm being honest.
And there was some times in 9-on-7, like that was in the middle of the field.
Yeah, where it looked real.
It's hard not to do. You have inside run like that,
yeah,
or what we could call inside fun. It's hard not to.
Well, and I don't even know.
Like if you're playing a puller, like you got to play the puller.
I also don't know how you would even. I'm sure there's stuff to get out of it, like a walkthrough or whatever, but I don't even know how you would get much out of it unless you are playing it straight up.
Yeah.
In terms of like, okay, I got bear hugged, I'm down. You know what I mean? Like that just doesn't. So yeah, I would I
mean, you're watching those pass rushes drills and those 1v1s for the linemen. That's full go now. You can't really half-ass that.
No, I mean, you're going to get yourself in trouble if you try, or you're just not going to get anything out of it. There's not really a kind of an happy in-between land where it's like, oh, I can still do some stuff here and not put myself in kind of a weird range of feeling uncomfortable, like I'm exposing myself a little bit. Like so that is strange. That part was strange to me, where it's like it at times it seemed like they were in half rack, and at times it seemed like it was full go. And I just don't know how you regulate that if you're a player.
It's hard.
Because honestly, it just doesn't make any sense to me.
Take some discipline.
Is it like what?
Probably more self-control. Yeah, it's self-control. There's similar concepts, discipline. So
what would you like typically as a coach? What would you be trying to accomplish in a half rack that you're not in full? Obviously, you're not going like full contact.
So sometimes it's to take the thing I like about, like, if you're in tandem with your strength and conditioning. And you maybe have a leg, like, it just depends on what else is going on. But sometimes you just you feel better emotionally not having to put the whole thing on. But I get I guess the functionality of it is similar. Yeah. But I mean, I'm not going to sit here and tell you, like, as a player, if you give me half versus full, I probably would choose half, but I also had a position coach that was like, hey, put your girdle in and put your thigh pads in.
Yeah.
Because he did not want a knee to the thigh.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that makes sense.
But shoot, I mean, it's like, if you're in helmets only, and you got to tell guys, hey, listen, man, don't lay out.
Yeah.
Okay?
Which is hard, I would imagine.
It is.
Yeah.
To not go get a rock that's in the air.
Yeah. Yeah. So that, I don't know. I just don't know. I'm sure there's stuff.
I know, because I kind of, you're in your personality, you're thinking, why not just go full pads?
Yeah, I mean, and I get there's limits, right? TK says 9 full padded, 18 contact days. So, like, I get there's like actual limits that you can't mess around with. I would have a hard time as a coach, and obviously I didn't coach football, so this is a foreign concept to me. But I would have a hard time as a coach figuring out how to get stuff out of that situation.
Yeah, I think the important thing is I'm not the four expert, but I think for us historically, who's been a part of some really physical teams, whether I'm playing or coaching, it's establishing practice tempo. The pads are just kind of like a thing.
Yeah.
But how you move during that time is already established.
Let's get to Michigan Lance calling in about fall camp. Lance, what's going on, man?
Hey, good morning, boys. How you doing?
What up? Hey, we got high 60s this morning. How about you?
Oh, high 60s.
It's about 65 maybe, which is
60. What in August?
Yes, and it was 103 yesterday.
What is going? Yep, typical Omaha weather. Here you get
my truck yesterday said 104.
Yeah, that's crazy. And now it's 65. Yeah, that's ridiculous. We're still, Hurricane Debbie passed, but we still got the aftermath of rain. It's still raining, so we get rain for like 48 hours straight. And it'll go from a lot to a little medium, so it varies.
Yeah.
Right now it's light, gray skies.
What's up with Kim?
Hey, the full, when you talk about full gear,
yeah,
like half rack and all that, and just helmets, like that isn't even the same anymore. Or you help me out, DB, because like, when we were growing up in the 90s, late 80s, 90s, like you had everything, the knee pads, you had everything down covering your knee. Like, so does it vary now up there, even on a high school level? Because in college,
yeah, those guys, even in full pads, don't put anything over their knees in practice.
Right. In high school, right?
Yeah. Even
exactly.
It's worse as you get older.
Mm-hmm. Exactly, right. So that's what I'm saying. So it's like when you're talking about, well, you like to go full and not half, man, it's basically half. It's been half probably for the last couple of years. You know what I mean? Because guys aren't wearing anything past their thighs. They're pulling them, thigh pads are probably in, but
yeah, I
would
probably
not, or rolled up high.
I would probably look at it the other way. I would say if you're in half rack, guys will sometimes take you to the ground anyway. That's why the culture has to kind of be set on tempo, because it's not necessarily what you're wearing. It's the rate of speed in which you do the drill. Like, is it a green drill? Is it a thud, or whatever the term is you use? Is it a thud drill? Are we stopping forward progress, or whatever? Because a lot of times the pads don't matter. So I think sometimes if you say what happens is I think when you go half and young people can't choke it down, coaches say, well, we might as well be in full pads. That's what I think. Not the other way, right? Where it's like, we're in full pads, so we should, lighten up. Mm-hmm. I think. Yeah. But yeah, with the cap number of padded practices, I think you do have to be smart, though.
Yeah, but I mean, does it after a while, man? It's kind of like you said. There's guys that's just gonna go full anyway.
Yeah,
what I mean. It's like in half rack, and it's just like
every team has a handful of guys.
Yeah,
that it doesn't really matter. Like it's
as soon as the shoulder pads come on, it is what it is.
It's a crapshoot. Because there's always the guy that thinks he's broke loose. And then there's always the guy that wants him to know that he didn't break loose and that tackle would have been made. So, I mean, it just is what it is.
No, man, it's just funny how the times has changed. Like, and it trickled down to high school. I think it varies does it vary from game to game to you with refs? Like, some refs are really sticklers on below the knee.
Oh, yeah.
Or on the knee, and then some aren't.
There's two crews in particular. Where we're like, okay, different color arm this. They're not going to let like, some guys are cool, Some guys will like make you take your, hey, how's the eye black? Is it smeared? Is it? I mean, they
right.
It's like, okay, we know how this is going to go. But I mean, you do, I guess for me, I do want, players' safety. Like, I want you to cover your knees to some degree, but if you have your like HALF half your knee pads, or go with the small circular knee pads, and they're making an effort. Like, I'm not mad about.
Yeah, I'm
not mad
at
the truth.
I'm not either way. Like, I probably over the years I've tapered off, because, like you said, I've seen college and NFL guys, like, they don't even wear pads. I mean, they don't even wear leg pads in the NFL, and that's the most violent you can get. Like, it's like, man, you guys, I guess, the pads, I guess, don't matter that much.
Yeah, I think officials will tell you, because I've heard it. Not that it's ever been said to me in pregame, but when those guys make the big bucks, they can make those kinds of decisions. I may not be making that up. that may be verbatim. But yeah, when do you guys start camp?
Oh man, we started camp. We a weekend, my man. We started last Monday on the 29th. Yeah, we got
when's opening day?
The 23rd. We have a preseason game on the 16th.
Jeez.
Real life preseason game where it doesn't count, but you play it, play like a game. And then we actually get to scrimmage another school this Saturday.
Hey, are you guys on natural grass?
Yes, we are. Yeah. We got natural grass. Not too many people have field turf in this area. I don't know about any other area of Florida, but in the Jacksonville area and around, there's not a lot of turf fields, man, because that turf gets hot, man.
Yeah, gotcha.
But then again, though, the turf gets hot, but then again, on the grass, like the drainage isn't good down here. You know what I mean? So, yeah, you'll be running in puddles like that. That's the, so I haven't decided on which is better down here, grass or turf, just because of, rain and injury. I don't know. But what do you think about the injury stuff in field turf? Have you seen it a lot? Because everybody in Omaha does. So
I'm team grass. I'm team grass all the way.
Okay. Yeah, I think I've kind of changed a little bit more back to grass. As a coach, I love field turf because you don't get muddy and you know what I'm saying, like, as a coach. But yeah, for my players, yeah, I think I'm good with the grass, my man. And so it feels good to get a lot of these reps in with scrimmages, other schools, and having a game with a young team. I'm rooting for it. Get that stuff in there, man. Especially with teams' numbers. I mean, there has to be the majority. DB, you help me out. The majority of teams don't have numbers. The majority to go full go against each other, do they?
No.
Like, is it? I mean, let these guys scrimmage instead of having the inter-squad scrimmage. Like, we're going to a Jamboree scrimmage. Be 6 teams there, right? So it'll be like, why can't they do that in Nebraska? Just play like Omaha South should be playing Northwest in the scrimmage. You know what I mean? Before.
Appreciate the call, Michigan Lance. We'll be back. More Hurrdat Sports Radio coming up next.
We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We're back here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla here on the Pillar Exterior stage. Coming up on the show today at 7:45, we're going to talk to Anthony Broome. He covers Michigan for On 3. Michigan finds themselves again in some hot water. We talked about that a little bit yesterday. We'll continue that conversation with Anthony today. At 9, we've got Mike Schaefer from Husker 24/7. And then at 9:45, we will preview Nebraska opponent Ohio State with Paul Keels, the play-by-play voice for the Buckeyes. that is your lineup for today. Joining us now on the Hurrdat Hotline is our guy TK, wanting to talk about pads. What's up, TK?
Good morning, fellas. How we doing?
Good. What's up?
Oh, I just, speaking about the half rack stuff, just brought all the good old memories and concussions back to me.
Yeah, concussions. That's happening with or without. That's happening. That's about tempo, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I fully agree with that. I don't think that enough people think about the implications of what goes through a player's head, because they have the shoulder pads on. They're going to want to hit somebody. You kind of have to, like, my coach is very good about this, in which he designed our whole practice around being in half rack. So lots of bag work, lots of all that stuff.
Yeah. So they've changed, the rules change so fast. Like now we have to have, like, even in high school, you have to have like a declared outcome, a declared winner, take guys to the ground, not take guys to the ground. You have to have your practice plans turned in. So it's like,
really?
Oh yeah. Yeah. They monitor it pretty well. The declared winner thing, I think, is important, right? Okay, so you have to say, hey, this is an offensive drill.
Mm-hmm.
Do I know what I want the outcome to be? Do you know what you want the outcome to be? So then it just doesn't turn into like a free for all. Yeah, it's pretty particular though. I'll give you that. I mean, I'll give them that. They have really upped player safety.
How does the declared winner stuff work in practice, you think?
So
I've never heard of that.
Yeah. So like when they mean declared winner, it is, so you say, hey, this is a defensive drill. We're going to wrap up. Offensive guy, let him do blank. Or you basically walk through what the outcome is supposed to be, as opposed to, like, let's say, Oklahoma drill, where you don't know what the end game is, right? Like, that's the difference. So basically you have to do like an offensive drill or a defensive drill. Hey, offensive guy is supposed to win. Hey, defensive guy is supposed to win. Do you know what I mean? You have to kind of you verbalize the outcome, and then the practice plans. Like if say your athletic director, NSAA, or when you turn your practice plans in, they want to check it. They'll know the drills. Hey, declared winner, not a declared winner, and you only get so many open-ended results
because they're trying to avoid having too many
unnecessary
scrimmages. Basically.
Yeah. Where there is no declaration.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that required for all half rack practices?
It's your practice plans in general for the week.
Oh, okay.
So you have to operate.
How many non-declared winner drills can you have?
So that I'm not sure, but like, let's say on a given day, there's 3 things we do every day, right? Or Monday through Wednesday. There'll be some sort of tackling circuit, right? And so on one of those days, it will either have to be on bags, or you can, there's ways that the rules are written. Like, let's say we have a jumping pad for track, so we can use the jumping pad as a landing spot
to
tackle guys into, but still do the form drill without a declared winner. So it's not like it's not gaming the system, but you do have to keep kids safe. You know what I mean?
Gotcha.
Yeah.
TK,
that makes sense.
Appreciate the call, bud.
Yes, sir.
Thanks, TK.
So that's interesting. I didn't know. I think you told me the practice plan thing before, but I think I'd forgotten about it. That's pretty intense in terms of like level of monitoring.
And I don't you'd have to ask individual coaches like how often they have to turn those in. But I know after practice, like, it's another however many minutes to do the practice plan for the next day as a staff, and it's typed up. Like, we have a running Excel spreadsheet, and what Coach Lamanji will say is, hey, I left this time open. Position coaches, this is the goal. You can pick the drill within this goal. Like, hey, we want angle and pursuit, or hey, we want this, and so then you fill in your spreadsheet. But those plans, they're They're typed out every day and they're handed to a coach. Like all coaches have one.
And that goes to NSA
if they want it.
Okay. So it's not, you don't have to turn them in every day. They like request.
I don't know how. I mean, that's probably a Newhouse question.
Okay.
But they need to be readily available, especially if somebody complains.
Yeah.
You know, like and sometimes it's internal, sometimes it's apparent.
Yeah. Well, I would imagine. I mean, I don't know how else anybody know.
But hell, you'd be surprised.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
You get some Connor Stallion spies out there or what?
Yeah, 100%. Oh, you should. Oh yeah.
I'm not I'm not disagreeing. I just it's funny to me.
Ask random coaches around the metro how many times they've sent a staff. Usually it's me, so that's how I know. But like, hey, go see who that is.
Yeah,
it happens all the time. It happens all the time.
What are we even doing?
You'd be surprised.
I mean,
you have national soccer teams using drones. What do you mean?
Yeah, I get it. I just
now, how crazy was that story?
I don't.
Who has the stones to use a drone to spy on other people's practices?
I'm sure it helps. I'm sure if you are able to get it and decipher it, like I'm sure you can get an advantage out of it. Otherwise, people wouldn't do it. But I'm just like, what are we doing?
I know. I mean,
well, tell me this: if you knew how other teams were practicing, how helpful would that be to you?
Oh, it depends. Like, I don't care about your drills,
right? But like, you know what kind of plays they're going to run, that kind of stuff.
And you do film exchange,
yeah,
right? So,
I mean, outside of early, that's what I mean. Like outside of early in the season, where you haven't seen them on tape yet, or maybe they've got.
No, I'm with you.
Especially in high school,
I'm with you.
When you have different personnel and stuff, and you don't have as much. You know, you probably know less about.
I mean, sometimes you'd probably like to know if somebody was playing.
Okay, sure. So, like injury status of guys.
Yeah.
But outside of that, you've already done film exchange.
I don't really see much.
Like, I
don't know.
What are we doing?
Well, why was the sign stealing thing such a big deal?
Well, signs.
It's obviously there's things that are advantageous.
So sign stealing to me is different than watching practice. Now, if you're able to get signs from practice, then that's a different story.
Yeah.
But if you know when they're going to run a play, that's way more advantageous than, hey, they run this play.
I'd probably
I'd
probably have to ask Coach Sikora the number. But like, let's say I know for a fact, and I'm not on that side of the ball as much anymore with this team, but I know our offensive signals have changed at least 2 or 3 times in 5 years.
Yeah, no,
do you know what I mean?
I totally understand the value of knowing the other team's signals. I get that. But you're probably not getting that from watching practice, are you?
I wouldn't think so.
I wouldn't either.
You know, but it just depends on how people practice. Like on Wednesdays and Thursdays, we bring the headsets out and we do
I would say, yeah, with the headsets in high school, it probably is not
we do live things though. But I mean, it just depends. It just depends on how people's practices go. Again, for us, let's say if we do, we may be doing a drill and coach may say, hey, no coaching the players on the field. Let's game simulated from the sidelines.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll put headsets on. We won't coach on the fly. It's a live drill.
Yeah.
Just to get them
used to.
Yeah. Yeah. I've watched Coach Sikora for years. He won't say anything. He'll just signal. And some of it is teaching.
Yeah.
You know, hey, make sure you learn the signal. Some of it is like, hey, in real game situation, I'm up in the booth. I can't help you.
Yeah, so you're not going to hear anything from me.
Know?
Yeah.
Or we'll do like O-line signals one thing. You know, wide receivers will signal another.
Yeah.
I mean, people do that stuff all the time. Like, that's not novel.
Yeah, no, I get that. And again, knowing the signals, I totally understand the value in that. I'm having a hard time. Like, why?
Ask anybody. It's not.
I'm not telling you. I'm not saying you're making it up.
Ask Coach Burrell. It's like, hey, how many times have you don't want strangers at your practice? Or is there any of these guys?
I just don't know why people are doing that. Be better than that, guys.
Coach Martin, hey, who's the guy on the hill? I don't know, man. He's just in the neighborhoods.
DB, he's just got his binoculars. He's doing some bird watching. That's DB. I'm Ravi. We'll be back with Anthony Broome. He covers Michigan for
Speaking of signs.
We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Wrapping up hour number one here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla here at Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill. And we are joined now by Anthony Broome. He covers Michigan for the Wolverine On 3, part of the On 3 Sports Network. Anthony, how are you this morning?
I'm doing wonderful. Thank you for having me.
Good morning, Anthony.
Anthony, I gotta just jump right in here with you. How much was expected from the notice of allegations draft that was handed to Michigan over the weekend? Was it a shock at all? What was named in there, or who was named?
Yes and no. One of our guys over at the Wolverine had kind of gotten word earlier last week of some of the things. Certainly, the deleted text messages with, it was hinted at that it was Sharon Moore. Obviously, ESPN puts out that it was Sharon Moore's text messages that came up in there. Some of the other stuff I think was mostly well known about. I think really, the big thing you circle, or at least nationally, that's being circled about what came out Sunday is Sharon Moore's involvement, and that, now it's another Michigan head coach, the second Michigan head coach that's been kind of dragged into this thing. I don't know if any of it is a surprise. I don't know how consequential any of it is, given that it is a draft notice of allegation. So, and it might not even be the most recent draft. It could just be one that was floated out to ESPN. So not a whole lot surprising to me. I think there's definitely a lot more social media bluster over it than maybe what the reality of the situation is. But, at the same time, just it's back in the news. That's not something Michigan fans are crazy about, but it's a situation that they're dealing with regardless.
All right, let me get some clarity there. So bluster as in making more of a draft than what may actually come out, or bluster as in even though he's renamed for the second time, no big deal?
I think more just the freaking out, the social media reactions. Like, oh, well, here you go. Like, the hammer's coming. They've got you. They're coming after you. Whereas I really just think that what came out is what has been discussed. Yeah. What is, things that are being, really what this is a public negotiation going on through leaks, which
that's kind of my follow-up question. It's like, okay, because I could see I could see two things. From the Michigan standpoint, I would say to myself, like, why leak this? Like, who's actually leaking this? Like, here they go targeting us again. On the other hand, it doesn't have to be viewed as a negative either, because at least it gives Michigan, and I'm not saying that they're not aware, but you get a pretty good frame of reference of what people actually may think too.
Yeah, and I think a lot of this was probably known to like people in the know. Like,
yeah,
Michigan's not hiring Sharon Moore if it knows about a text message thing and that there was anything incriminating in there. No, I'll just say this: like, my understanding of that is that the perceived things like lack of cooperation is more people involved are just not giving their stuff to the NCAA. It's like, hey, I'll have a third party image my phone and give you the results of that, but we don't necessarily have to give our stuff directly to you. So it's a lot of that too. The tone of it is, when you look at some of the allegations, there is no, and this is not me exonerating them by any stretch of the imagination, but there's no smoking gun in terms of this being a wide-ranging, well-known, quote unquote scheme. A lot of what the NCAA is trying to hit Michigan with is the lack of cooperation. And then, there's some recruiting stuff in there, helping a kid get his Instagram verified and maybe buying a recruit a meal on campus or a player a meal. What the NCAA is doing through that is basically like, when you have all these tiny little charges, they don't have much, if anything, on the sign stealing, but they can try and hit them for lack of cooperation, lack of institutional control, a pattern of noncompliance. So I think that's a lot of what we're seeing and why a lot of this stuff is getting out publicly. And also, there's a documentary from Connor Stallion's point of view coming out later this month. I think the NCAA is trying to get, in front of that as well.
So, Anthony, let me ask you this, because I think you bring up a good point that most of what the NCAA is kind of coming at least seemingly in the draft, is the lack of cooperation and kind of the non-compliance issues with Michigan. Is that something that should concern, I guess, the university a little bit more? Because even if there's not anything incriminating in the text messages, the fact that they were deleted, isn't that all the NCAA really needs if that's what they're going at?
If they're looking to punish for, non-compliant
or lack of transparency, maybe.
Yeah, I think again, just put yourself in a different context. Like if someone is potentially accused of something, and the first thing that you see when you question them is that their text messages were deleted, that's a red flag. But that's also why you investigate too, right? Like I think, if it's true that they did eventually get what they were looking for and that nothing was incriminating, I don't know. Yeah, I struggle to see how that leads to a suspension. Now, again, just to fast forward through everything, I think ultimately what the end of all of this is that anyone that was involved, like a Connor Stallions, like Chris Partridge was dismissed because of allegedly leading a kid to not necessarily saying anything not necessarily saying anything to investigators. You can't coach up a witness, so to speak. Anyone that's involved is has either already been suspended, probably gets a show cause. Wouldn't be surprised if Jim Harbaugh gets some kind of show cause out of it. But at the end of the day, I think what the end result is that when everything calms down and everyone stops looking for their pound of flesh through leaks and through social media, I really think Michigan's going to pay a big fine. I think they're going to be on probation, but I think that's ultimately really the thing that's going to come out of it. I think, as Pete Thamel has said, I don't think any of their accomplishments are going to come into question. I mean, they can come into question publicly, but nothing's getting vacated. I think that really, again, that's why I use the word bluster to start, just because it's a lot of noise. And ultimately, I think it's a process that's still going to play out over the next couple of years.
Kind of an all-in-one here. We were in Indy, and I came back when I got back, and I said, a couple of things that I was really impressed with. I was impressed with Edwards, his vulnerability. I liked Moore's tenor and tone. I forgot that he was actually that big of a guy as an offensive lineman in college. It was. And I like the command. And so I was watching the championship game on Sunday, and I said on Twitter, I said, I forgot how Michigan still won this game and left so much out there, especially with poor special teams play. And I say all that to say, watching these running backs and watching what's going on, what happened with Mike Hart? Because quietly, this was about as well-coached a backfield. And the way that those guys ran, similar styles, you'd go 4 deep sometimes. I saw it in Lincoln firsthand. Like, what happened quietly with Mike Hart's departure? I mean, it just seemed like he went from, I'm here one day, great hire, a couple years, I'm recruiting, to, yeah, I'm out. Like, is there more to that?
I don't know. It's trust me, it's weird to us too. I mean, it
flew under the radar. That backfield was and I get it. Those guys are good, but their style and their pace, and he was incredible.
Yeah, it's super weird. I'll be completely honest with you, and there are a lot of things that even we don't really have answers to. Now, his contract did expire. I think that was part of it too. I think there were maybe behind the scenes some, he came to Michigan as a guy that had publicly sort of feuded with Jim Harbaugh before.
Yep.
As a player, again, that's I think you let bygones be bygones to a certain extent there, but sometimes it's just time too. Remember a couple of years ago, Jim Harbaugh got on a plane to Minnesota really with the intent of taking that job if offered.
Yeah.
And playing out around that was kind of like this Game of Thrones-esque, like who's next in line? Would it have been Josh Gaddis, who won the Broyles Award? Would it be Mike Hart, who kind of came back home as the prodigal son? Would it have been Sharon Moore? I think at the time, it probably would have been Mike Hart. It wasn't. Jim Harbaugh comes back, and a couple of years play out. One thing leads to another, and all of a sudden, Sharon Moore is kind of really, in a lot of ways, the hand-picked successor to Jim Harbaugh, whether it would have been after last year or 2 years from now, 5 years from now, whatever it would have been. And I got to be honest, I think there were some hard feelings over that. And on the same token, I'm not 100% sure what was going on, but I think there was some personal stuff that needed to be addressed with Mike Hart. I'm not privy to what that was, but it's weird for sure, especially, it went into Sherrone Moore basically had his entire staff set, and then, Ohio State's into spring football for a couple of days. All of a sudden, Tony Halford's the running back coach, which kind of happened overnight. So
I'm like, this is getting, and I just pay attention. I love the running style, so I kind of gravitated towards it, and I'm with you, man. It was just like, wow, this seems to be flying under the radar for a guy that did such a good job.
Yeah, it's weird, but we'll see what happens with him moving forward. We'll certainly wish him well. He's an excellent coach.
You expecting a big year from Edwards?
I do.
Yeah.
I think he's the guy that's been waiting for, a full allotment of touches, whether it's in the slot, whether it's as a running back. He's always been a bit of a volume guy. When he gets the requisite amount of touches, that's when he's had some of his biggest moments. So I think that national title game was a good springboard for him. Like, he's been healthy off season. He got his body right. And, he's going to have a running mate in Khalil Mullings that I think is going to have a say in it too.
Yeah.
But I don't think there's going to be much drop off in that backfield, which is kind of crazy given that Blake Corum's not there anymore.
That's Anthony Broome. He covers Michigan for On 3. Anthony, we appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks, AB.
More Hurrdat Sports Radio coming up next.
We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. Welcome to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Kicking off hour number 2 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. That's DB. I'm Ravi, Lulla, and we're reminding you if you're heading on into work this morning, make sure you've got that seatbelt fastened. It prevents injuries and saves lives, but you have to make sure you're wearing it properly. Make it click. A message from the NDOT Highway Safety Office. So, DB, I want to return to the Michigan thing here for a minute because we appreciate Anthony's time. We appreciate everybody over at On 3. We talk to our guy Tim Verghese every week from On 3 from the Nebraska side as well.
Nah, he's Rivals.
Yep.
He's inside Nebraska.
He is Rivals. That's my bad. Who do we talk to from On? Oh, Sip. Sip's the only guy we talk to from On 3.
Yeah.
I get there's a lot of them now.
Robin. We
talk to Robin.
We don't talk to Robin enough though.
Yeah, we don't talk to Robin a ton, but we during basketball season probably need to
big wash it guy.
Yeah, we probably need to get him back in here. Yeah, Tim's our Rivals guy. What am I doing? There's too many of them now. When I was a kid, there's just the one.
When I was a kid. How about
back in the day?
Did you realize BC and Bruns were sitting in front of us?
Yeah. I said bye to them on the way out.
I did on my way back up from talking to when I went to go talk, but
yeah.
That was at the very end. I didn't know they were sitting there.
So I walked over with Bruns.
Oh.
So I saw him.
That just lets you know. I'm no fun. Can you believe that people actually want to watch things with me? Like, I'm no fun.
But you're focused.
Yeah.
Like, that's all it is. But I know that about you, so, like, I'm not going to say much either. Like, I didn't talk very much. I had a couple.
No, and I could appreciate that.
Yeah, because I know what you're doing. Like, I'm not trying to distract you or anything.
I really, really, because sometimes I wonder, it's like.
No, I know what you're doing. Like, I'm not trying to be. Like, I sat up there because I was like, I'm just going to sit next to DB and his family. But I also know, like, I'm okay with just sitting there in silence. I don't have a problem.
That's nice.
Yeah, I don't have an issue with that.
I think dudes can do that.
For the most part, yeah.
But it's just weird because, I will preface something by saying, hey, I'm going to stand where no one else is. Or I do that at all the time, man.
And I know, like,
I'm going to, number one, I want to learn.
Mm-hmm.
Number two, I want to know what's going on. And I know those sound like the same thing, but sometimes I either want to grab drills,
mm-hmm.
which is a big one.
Yeah.
Or sometimes it's
something, a drill you like, you want to implement in practice.
Or sometimes it's something random, like, hey, what's the difference between, for instance,
mm-hmm.
what's the difference between Lefotu, Keona Davis, and Riley Van Poppel?
Yeah. I'm glad you brought up Keona Davis because that was a guy when we were watching some of the O-line, D-line drills when they were kind of right in front of us down on the goal line. And they were doing it was a one-man drill for the defensive line, but the whole offensive line was in there. I don't know what that's called.
Well, the cool thing about that is it simulates real.
Yeah, like you're hitting a gap properly or whatever, so you know like what your rush
they're
lane
working.
is
Yes,
versus
and they're working on protection.
Right, but you're also kind of limiting the contact by not having it full O-line versus D-line.
Correct.
So I don't know if that drill has a name or whatever, but that's what I was watching. And there were a couple times where I'm like, who's 97? And I looked up and I'm Keona Davis. There were he had a few moments where I was like, oh, I don't know how much that translates, but I was like, I was impressed.
Yeah.
By kind of the get off.
And I think, and people will ask me about him, and sometimes he'll come up in trendy discussions just because he'll flash. I think the thing for this D-line, and you heard Ty Robinson reference it, and I know it's like one of those things with like Vincent Carroll Jack, because I've asked about guys in particular. Hey, what about this guy, this guy, this guy, or this guy? And ultimately, it always boils down to lateral quickness. And I'm not going to go as far as to say a two-way guy. But the more one-dimensional you are, the less apt.
Could we call it a three-down guy?
We'll go with three downs. Right? But
basically not a specialist.
The reason I shy away a little bit from a three-down guy is because I don't want you to. if you're not, I don't want you to say, well, you're not good against the run,
Right.
or you're only good against the run, or you want to be put it this way, you want to be as balanced as possible.
So that's why
what did
Jim-
Ty Robinson say? Yeah, I'm pretty pissed. I only had 1 sack.
Yeah, right.
Right, like,
yep.
And for an interior, like that used to be a big deal. Like
Mm-hmm.
if Vince Wolford got a sack, it was like,
yeah,
OMG, they're getting put. That's what made Fletcher Cox special.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's what made Sue special,
right? Because you don't get
disruptive from an inside line position.
So like it's asking a lot, but the game has changed.
Well, and I think there's.
I mean, when you wonder when people did think Jordan Davis was too big, like that didn't used to be a thing.
Yeah, there was no such thing as too big. 390 pounds, perfect.
Yeah. Now guys like Flozo Adams probably couldn't play.
Well, and it's the Aaron Donaldification of the inside line spot, right? This dude comes in at 5'11", 280, and is like, oh, don't worry, I'm just the best player in the league. It's fine.
Oh.
I did like watching some of those guys though. So is that like why Jamari Butler is like, hey, I'm going to put on 25 pounds,
right,
so I can play all the time,
yeah.
Right? Or
you just want to. I mean, it's like a portfolio, right?
Mm-hmm.
You want it pretty diverse.
How much of being that 3-down guy is a consistency and effort issue versus
a lot?
Okay,
a lot. I think, like, the more I'm around this thing, I think the ability to not have drop off is way more critical than being able to flash.
You just do it all the time.
Yep. I've said this for probably 15 years. Ever since so Calvin Strong is a guy that I used to coach that like changed my mind about this. And he's probably the reason why I say being great is being good all the time.
Yeah.
Because he was a guy whose 31st carry
looked the exact same as the first one.
Just like his first. And I'm like,
and he wasn't a big guy either.
No. He's 185.
Mm-hmm.
And he's incredibly tough. And I just remember, I'm like, he's a tough recruit. Like, he's a hard guy
he's a hard eval.
He was a brutal eval.
Yeah.
Because you had to watch him over time.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he just wore people down.
And physically, that style of running back typically doesn't come in that body type.
Nope.
So like that's
so he wasn't elite level top end speed.
Yeah.
And for a small guy, that's usually what they're looking for.
Yeah.
You either are a pass catcher or
lateral quickness, third down back.
It's like being a small guard.
Burst.
You either got to have great handle, be a great shooter. If you're just good and you're small, it's like,
what am I doing with this?
There's a lot of guys like that. So I think for Nebraska in general, it's consistency, right?
Mm-hmm.
I look at. I'm not trying to give away the milk for free, but like I look at the evolution of the safety position, right? From Fields to Rovers to traditional strongs or frees. You don't really have a free safety. It's a terminology, but there's 3 of them, right?
Mm-hmm.
You got Hartzog, who's the field guy. You got Singleton, and then you've got Giff, who's the rover.
Mm-hmm.
The more you can cross train, the more you can be. Then you don't have to just have Bretts be like the next rover or, Buford be the next field. It's like, if you could, being a 2-way, or every down, that's what they're after. Those are the guys that are going to play.
A place we don't talk about that very much with is wide receivers.
1,000%
able to play the different wide receiver spots.
You know what changed Jalen Lloyd's life?
What's that?
Being able to play in the slot.
Yeah.
The fastest way to get on the field?
Being able to play in the slot?
No.
Being able to do multiple things?
That's best case scenario.
Yeah.
But the easiest way to get on the field as a wideout is to know, the X or the Z.
Yeah.
Master that.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, we can get you the ball.
Yeah.
Being able to move around within those position groups. That's why Lindemeyer plays.
Yeah. Because he can do whatever.
Well, I mean, that's why Bonner plays. What doesn't Bonner know?
Yeah, I mean, he's got to know that whole thing inside and out.
Where he's played everywhere.
Yeah.
He's been an H-back. He's been a tight end. He's been a wide out. So I think the cross,
because that's a
cross
thing,
training it's a big deal.
That wide receiver, especially, that's a thing that you just people don't talk about.
Yeah,
they don't talk about.
I just think defenses and athletes are too good now to just say, why was Davon Hall never going to have a big game against us? He's just a straight line guy.
Yeah.
The more like when they move guys around,
mm-hmm.
Oh, that's hard.
That starts to get a little interesting.
Yeah, like if you put him in a slot sometimes, or like.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, if you're just lining up there at the top of the numbers, and there's only so much you can do.
Right.
So
you better be Randy Moss.
And it limits how good guys can really be. Like when was McMorris a handful? Well, he's terrible to deal with in the slot.
Yeah, just lining up all over the place.
Right. It's like, okay, where's this guy?
Yeah.
Or Jordan, or some of these guys that have been real good there. And I only use those guys because, like, why did I pay such close attention to where Amarion Jackson lines up? Outside the numbers, he can only do so much.
Yeah.
You let this guy start to work in the slot,
you got some problems.
Well, why do I have to think at some point we're going to need some big nickels
or
some guys that are in the slot that can cover if we see these guys, right? Like, so those are the kinds of things.
Well, that's why tight ends can be so problematic, right?
Yeah.
With whether guys that, like Fedoni is kind of the same way. You can put him in line. You can kind of put him in the slot.
How good did he look?
Fedoni looks incredible.
I'm not sure, like, because he's always been a gym rat.
Yeah, he looks incredible.
He looked amazing.
Well, and he looks like he's moving a lot better.
Yeah.
But, I know Rule kind of made a comment in spring that, well, he's always moved good.
He was with his family, and I don't mess with his dad too much. I just got to figure out what kind of mood his dad's in. I'm kidding. His dad's a great guy.
Yeah. It's a little intense.
Very.
Yeah.
You see where Thomas gets it from.
Yeah.
I reached over I said, hey, I'm not trying to interrupt the family. I just gave him some dab. He gave me the little point and the little nod. And I'm like, man, dude looks like $1 million. And maybe I have to be careful because maybe I'm hearing what I want to hear or seeing what I want to see. Because I did say that's my pick to click for the season of the guy. That's my bounce back guy.
Yeah. He's moving super fluid and he's enormous.
He's just he's
going to be a problem.
Mean spirited.
And if you've got a guy,
you know who his roommate is?
Who?
Ingerson.
That's
similar temperaments.
Let's get to the Hurrdat hotline here. Kurt calling in about some of these multi-talented players. Kurt, what's going on, man?
Hey guys, how you doing?
Kurt, what's up?
Hey, I hear you talking about, Nebraska players, and for some reason I'm kind of focused on the defensive players that you're talking about.
Yeah.
And I think every coach would prefer to have a multi-versed athlete at any position, and not a one-trick pony.
Correct.
But is that more specific to what Nebraska needs, or do you feel like that's or do we just do more of a pinpoint focus on finding that player at any given position?
I think that's a great question. I think it depends on the position. Like, I think if you can look at a corner and you can say, man, that's a cover corner, right? Like, we can win with that guy doing this. Now, you could make the case.
Is that Bly Hill?
You could make the case, hey, listen, man, they could put you into the boundary. Like, they could make you be good in the run game, but coaches would be more willing to negotiate a guy that was a lockdown corner. I think where you want the most flexibility is second and third interior guys, your backers and your safety types. Those guys you want multi-talented.
Gotcha. Do you think they know that when they're recruiting these guys, or do you think they find that out once they get to Nebraska?
I do. I think they're very, very, very specific. Because if you watch them practice, I mean, Buford, nobody said anything, but I mean, Buford was playing corner the other night, right? I mean, but he's in all intents and purposes, he's a safety, but he was playing corner the other night. Like, that's a thing that I think, and I say that because, like, what if Nebraska breaks the huddle with Emmett Johnson, Borkature, Lindemeyer, Fedoni, and Banks, right? You think, oh shoot, that could be 3 tight ends. It could be, are the tight ends going to work flex? Are they going to be in the slot? Is that 10 personnel? Is that 13? You have to have players that can match up with that. If Fedoni and Lindemeyer are outside the numbers like Penn State did to Nebraska in 12 or 13, I don't want little corners out there. Right? I want a Buford that can line up outside the numbers and be able to handle guys on the perimeter.
Well, and that's the ancillary benefit. It's a nightmare to scout for the week of. I mean, if that's truly what we're going to do, and we've got players that play positions, but they're not a position player, that's a nightmare to have to scout for that week of.
I appreciate the call. That's the whole goal.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
you make it hard to scout.
Yeah, I mean, you want
the same thing they're doing on offense.
It's a lot of what they want to do on offense.
Yeah, it's exactly. That's what Bonner and Fedoni and Lindemeyer and that's why all those guys are important to this team. Even I think
go look and see where Borkacher lined up when he made the first catch in the spring game. So it's like little things like that where it's really easy. They want to make corners tackle and they want to make linebackers cover.
Yeah. And by having guys that can do lots of things or can be lined up lots of places.
I remember one practice.
It's easy to force that situation.
Coach Rule was like, "Hey, can we get a guy that's not 165 pounds out here
at corner?"
Yeah.
Do
you know why? Because that offense is going to put you in conflict.
Yeah, they're going to put you in tough spots.
Right. They'll get in a 2-by-1. They'll put you to the boundary. You'll be spilling to a guy that's 180 pounds, and he's going to have to make a tackle.
Yeah. And I don't know if you know this about a lot of 180-pound football players. Sometimes they don't love tackling.
You know what we're thinking right now? This isn't giving away, spilling the tea. It's like we know with North, 2-back or weak side run game, and we spill the way we do, our corner better be able to tackle. So guess what? We're getting guys ready that can fit in the run game.
Yeah.
Do you have to be able to turn and run? Sure. But I know one thing. You can't be gun shy.
Yeah.
Like, they will put you in conflict. They will say, we'll block him. We'll pull and kick him out. We'll leave this. They will tell you, we'll leave you right there with our best runner. And they have a couple of them. And that corner will have to make that play.
We'll take our chances.
And we got to be like, okay. Right? Because that's you want guys like that. Kurt asked a good question. I think the place where you're most willing to have a one-dimensional guy is either a pass rusher
or cover corner.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you get that because pass rushers, you can predict kind of the situation they're going to be in more often.
You think people thought James Williams was in to stop the run?
Yeah, no.
Yeah, no.
I mean, no, not at all.
I mean, that guy got in a wide 9, pinned his ears back, and said, block me.
Here we go. I dare you. Yeah, and I think that's fair, because situationally it makes the most sense in terms of what you're trying to do defensively and when you can put those guys in there. And then cover corners they provide so much value.
Yeah.
If you have a guy that can actually lock down that you're like,
I'm glad Will Johnson can tackle, but he's going to make a ton of money because it's hard to get open against him.
Yeah. You're gonna take whatever sacrifice you have to for that level of certainty in coverage.
Yeah.
And not having to roll guys over to him or whatever in terms of help. Zach asked a good question on Twitter here. He says, any concerns about the linebackers this year? Seems like the media is just glancing over the loss of returning production.
Everybody but the guy that told you that's my position to watch the most.
Yeah.
Where if they play well, I said just give Dvorak the Burroughs Award.
Yeah.
Yeah, because and I went as far as to say if Bullock and Wright, if those guys are really, really good, the defense has a chance to be great. I'm with you, Zach. I'm not glossing over it. I do think that those guys,
crucial.
They gotta be good, especially in this defense. I'm 100% with Zach.
Let's get to the Hurrdat hotline. We got Cody wants to talk about Husker practice. Cody, what's going on, bud?
Well, that couldn't have worked out any better for when you guys were talking about linebackers.
Commander Cody Genatone Manquist, how we doing?
Oh, we're doing.
Would Al mind if you adopted the last name for a while, considering how good you've been to the family?
What's that?
You think Al would mind if you borrowed the last name for a little bit, just considering how close you guys are?
I don't know if I can hold up. I don't know if I can hold up to that name. They're all pretty good athletes.
It's crazy, isn't it? They all look like from mom to dad to sister. It all looks like if you said, "Hey, go do a decathlon," they'd be like, "Oh, what time we start?"
So it's funny. I've texted Vince. I was like, "Hey, if football doesn't work out for you in the future, what do you think about doing that decathlon?" He goes, "I don't run over 200 meters, so I'm out."
He's the perfect guy. What we're talking about, right? Kind of that Bullock type that can do a few different things and can get downhill.
Yeah. And so what I was calling about is, first off, I am completely drawing a blank on his name. 33, outside linebacker.
Javen Wright.
Javen Wright looks incredible.
He does.
If he can stay healthy, I think that our fan base will be very pleased.
He gives them a lot of versatility too, because he can turn and run.
On top of that, he's one of those. You know how you guys always joke about the first off the bus kind of guys?
Yeah,
that's Javen Wright.
He used to. I don't know if you watched him since he was always hurt, so he couldn't really like work out. He used to be a rail. Now he's like a drinking straw. Now he looks like. Okay, go. Okay, I see.
My exact. I told my buddy Matt yesterday. I go, he looks like Andre Johnson lined up at linebacker.
He is a big, strong, fast kid.
And he's tall.
Yeah. Oh yeah, he's a legit 6'4".
Yeah, and so the thing that really impressed me about Dvorak, and it's not something I've seen before. I mean, obviously I've never really watched Indy as hard as I was watching Saturday. But even when guys were doing stuff right, he had them line up, because say Sherman or whoever went and just absolutely blew up the whatever guy they were doing on Indy, he would make them go redo it because he wanted to make sure the technique was right. He didn't care if you were blowing it up but you had to do it the right way. Because, like you say, in a game, it's not always going to be that way.
And you're not always going to be better. You're not always going to be better than that guy. I remember, Cody. Remember last year when I said my favorite thing about this was during spring. I said my favorite thing about watching Dvorak, because I kind of found myself gravitating, was he was always coaching whether the guys were in getting a rep or not. Like he was, and he would get on a knee. I kind of walked through how he would like talk to guys and not at them. Ravi made fun of me for going down on the field and talking to him, but he's one of those guys, man. Like, he's amazing, and he's a good person.
And the other thing too was, even so, Dvorak's watching the drill, right? Well, then the guys go to the back of the line, and you had Bullock there, going and talking to each guy, helping him out too.
Yeah.
And I thought that really stuck out to me. We're great. I like where they're at, and it was just something that really caught my eye. There was one other thing that caught my eye.
What's that?
Are you going to be running for like governor or anything? I've never seen someone go up and thank every single yellow cap, shake their hand, tell them they appreciate them, shake every single person's hand, shaking the water girl's hand, patting them on the back. And just me and Al were sitting there. It was towards the end of practice when you were heading out that south tunnel. You walked and shake every single yellow cap hand.
They're such good people, and nobody ever says, they have a hard job, and they're a little older, man. I just wanted to let them know I appreciated them. That's all.
Cody, we
too many skeletons for an office, though.
We appreciate the call, Cody. Coming up next, I do want to return to Michigan for a second.
Yeah.
Because there's a little bit of meat left on that bone that I'd like to pick at a little bit. That's all coming up next here on Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We will be back. 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 You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We're halfway through the show here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. That's DBM Ravi Lulla here on the Pillar Exterior stage. And we are talking a lot of college football this morning. We'll talk to Schaefer coming up at 9, and then we'll get some Ohio State preview at the end of the show with the play-by-play voice of the Buckeyes, Paul Keels. But before that,
One second.
Yes, sir.
Shane, Johnny, ex Johnny Husker.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's our volume, my volume. We do try to appease him around here.
Yeah.
He'd like a little more juice.
Juice.
But then sometimes, like, if you turn me up or you up, then I don't want to blow anybody's eardrums out over the commercial break either.
I'll see what I can do for him.
It is
my guy.
extremely crisp this morning, the audio.
Yeah.
Like it feels, I feel like.
Feels very clear.
Yeah. And it's weird too, because I try not to let it distract me, because I've been in some places where equipment isn't always the best and you just have to function.
Mm-hmm.
But it does change my level of being comfortable to have in-depth conversations if I feel like I'm being heard correctly. Is that weird?
No, I think I get that. It doesn't. It's not something that occurs to me.
It frees me up kind of internally.
Yeah.
When I feel it like that, it's like, so I'll probably say more because I think people can understand me.
Yeah, I mean that makes sense.
Versus not, right? But it's nothing you would ever know.
Yeah, and
but it's what happens in my head.
And it's not something that I would think of, but I could see how that's how you would think about it.
And the funny thing is, I let it affect the way that how in depth I'll answer questions to.
Well, I think
it's just like I feel like it's just clear.
Yeah, it does sound crispy today.
Right?
It does. What's up, Shane?
What do you want?
I got nothing. I wasn't on.
All right.
I heard him too.
Yeah, I heard the mic go on.
That's a great question.
You're one of those guys
that's.
Yeah, I know. As we'll talk to Schaefer at the top of the hour. Yep, because the hands would be pointing up. Top of the hour. Right, Shane?
No problem at all. Go Big Red.
Was that Tony?
I think that was.
No, that was MRI.
Oh yeah, similar voices.
Yeah.
Because yesterday, and I told you when they had him on television, by him I mean Jim Harbaugh.
Mm-hmm.
I was surprised that they were firing Michigan questions at him because usually you don't get that carryover from college to pro. Like it's like once guys go pro, it's like I don't remember anybody asking Pete Carroll about SC. Maybe they did
because he's the last one I think coming off a scandal.
And I was like
into the NFL, right?
But I did think it was interesting how Anthony said, as we talked to Anthony Broome earlier from Michigan's On 3 crew, where he kind of what's the word?
I thought he was a little dismissive.
He intimated that everybody kind of knew this.
Yeah.
All right. And I don't mean that part to be dismissive as much as I mean the allegations.
Yeah.
But when Harbaugh was asked yesterday, I knew nothing. I knew of no.
Yeah, which I don't buy.
So somebody's not telling the truth.
Well, I think there's a lot of people not telling the truth because, I mean,
because how could you?
Anthony was right.
Like, would you tell me? Would you be like, DB? Harbaugh's been focusing on the NFL, man. He doesn't know.
No, because this happened while he was there, and he wasn't a real hands-offy guy.
So you're out on that explanation.
Yeah, absolutely not. Like this was happening while he was there.
Okay.
And not just for a little while.
Okay.
You're telling me there was a thing because this was a 3-year issue. It was 21, 22, 23 until they got caught. So 2.5 years, right? You're telling me this dude who is like borderline psychotic, like he is not a laid back, laissez-faire type guy.
Pretty handsy-onsy.
Pretty hands-on, not a real. I wouldn't describe him as like a late-stage Bobby Bowden, where he's kind of sitting up in a literal tower and overseeing things. Like he's down in it, right? This is the guy that we see with the shirt off at practice getting after it. So you're telling me that guy's not real hands-on.
He pulled a sled the other day in suit pants.
Yeah. So you're telling me that's a guy that's
why was he wearing slacks at practice?
He always wears like either slacks or khakis. He's a weirdo.
Dude, those weren't khakis.
Slacks or khakis.
Yeah, because
they're different things. But like
those look like the bottom. Those look like pants you'd wear with a blazer.
Yeah, they look like suit bottoms or slacks.
How is that comfortable?
I mean, I don't know. I wear.
And how do you have enough working room? All I can think of is PJ Fleck in Indy, and I was like, that dude can't do anything without it being a problem.
Not a lot of range of motion in those. Although they do make some of the
Flexies.
Yeah, I like those a lot.
So I have 2 pair of those, and one has a little, the brand emblem is on the calf, and at least 17 times I've had somebody tell me there's something on my pant leg.
Hey, you got a little something there, DB.
They're incredible. Golfers wear them.
Yeah, they're super comfortable.
The minute Coach Lamanji said we had to wear pants,
you went and got some.
Oh. After I cried for 4 hours.
The Fleck, I know you tried to get out of it too.
Bro, it's like, I know people think I have an in with him. No, he's an equal opportunity offender. That dude is not making any concessions. It doesn't matter.
No,
not
even a little bit. But I will say the flex pants aren't nice. But that's my point. Like with Jim Harbaugh, that's not a hands-off dude. That is not a dude that is casual. That is not a man that is letting things go on for multiple years. Especially coming off of a year that could have cost him his job in 2020.
Don't you remember him in Indy?
Yeah. Well, I remember seeing him. I wasn't there.
But yeah, I know. I'm just saying, like, everybody could watch it. He was dismissive at best.
Yeah.
he seemed to kind of revel in it. So,
and he's a defiant guy too.
Oh, yeah.
So,
you could tell by nature. Yeah.
Yeah. So like I paid a lot of attention to Jim Harbaugh because he was a 49ers coach, right? So like I'm very familiar.
I pay a lot of attention to Harbaugh because I think he's amazing.
No, I think he's really good too. But I've been paying a lot of attention to Jim Harbaugh for a long time. I mean, this is pre-Michigan, where like you see him a lot. When you see the head coach of your favorite team a lot, right? You're taking the press conferences, you're watching post game, you're doing all sorts of stuff. Like this is a guy I'm pretty familiar with for not knowing him at all. And like he's a defiant guy. If he doesn't want to talk about something, he'll just pretend like it doesn't exist. And he will be incredibly dismissive about stuff that he doesn't care about. And so none of what he said yesterday makes me believe he didn't know. He just thinks he's above it because he's in the NFL now, so it doesn't matter. And he's probably right, to be fair. I mean, he probably is right. The NFL doesn't care what he did in college, just like the NFL didn't care what Pete Carroll did at USC. No, like they didn't care. So it doesn't do him any good to come out and be like, oh, yeah, I knew about that. And what's the upside there for him? There's no win there because then he throws his guys. Because if he knew, then Sharon Moore knew, then everybody else that's still at Michigan knew, right? So if he admits to it, he screws everybody.
So the alternative is just to say, I wasn't aware.
Yeah, that's the only thing.
Even though nobody believes that.
100%.
Okay.
Because admitting it is worse in terms of the fallout for people still at Michigan.
So what happened? Well, hey, listen, I'm the head coach of the Los Angeles Chargers now. I'll let that play out. I'll take more Chargers questions.
Yeah,
something.
I mean, that's a viable way to answer it, but
they are Los Angeles, correct? Yes.
As far as I still know, yeah. They may not.
I'm just happy I didn't say San Diego.
I do like 99% of the time. I do the Oakland thing worse than because
it is not optional.
Las Vegas doesn't feel like a place that has an NFL team, but it does. But
how about Las Vegas hosting Big Ten championships?
Yeah.
Is that 26 and 27?
I think so. I think so.
Everybody wants to have tournaments in Vegas. Go Hoopers.
Everybody.
That might not be a bad
little road, not a road trip, but a nice
Big Ten tournament
business trip.
Yeah.
Here's the thing though, if you say like
plus 900 to make the playoffs.
Here's the thing about if you just dismiss the questions, I'll be like, hey, I'm only talking about. Then people just assume anyway. Like they just assume you're lying anyway. It's like pleading the fifth. You ever heard somebody plead the fifth and be like, I don't think they have anything to hide?
Yeah, I just watched Law and Order where they thought they had a witness on the hook that said she was going to testify, and then she got up there and pled the fifth.
Yeah.
No.
Like nobody.
Carisi almost lost his mind.
Nobody who's ever pleaded the fifth, or you've heard somebody plead the fifth, be like, oh, yep, I don't think they have anything to hide. Right? So if you just avoid the question, you're going to end up in the same spot anyway. So really, there's no way for him to get out of that and not look like he's lying.
I wonder how the Stallions Netflix thing, because Stallions didn't cooperate. So is he gonna say something on Netflix where they're like, wait, what?
I have to imagine that
because Netflix ain't sitting down with this dude to have him talk about tea and crumpets.
I don't think they're paying that. I don't think they're making that writing that paycheck if he doesn't give him something.
Yeah, because he can't coach anymore.
Yeah,
I mean, who's hiring him?
No one ever. He'll be like, if he'd be lucky to coach a peewee team at this point. Like nobody's taking him.
Yeah, he had to get that money while he could.
Absolutely. I mean, hey, got to get paid. Coming up next, we'll wrap up hour number 2 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Welcome back as we wrap up hour number 2 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla, and I do want to remind you guys, coming up in just a few weeks here before the UTEP game, we will be kicking off our live breakfast once again. They won't be every week. There's going to be 4 throughout the season, and the first one is August 30th before the UTEP game. Get over to Eventbrite to sign up and get your tickets. Just search for Hurrdat Sports Radio on Eventbrite to get your tickets to the pregame breakfast August 30th before the UTEP game.
I know I'm going to say this at the risk of saying, well, duh. I think Amazing Daniel is nuts. My man said, people sometimes miss what the fifth really is, nor shall be compelled in any criminal cases to be a witness against himself. By definition, pleading the fifth while not implying guilt does imply suspicion that they would incriminate yourself by answering. I think most people know that.
Yeah, that's why
that's why it's invoked, right?
Yeah.
Like the because people don't want to incriminate themselves is why they don't answer. And when you don't answer, it seems very
incriminating,
suspicious.
Yeah, right.
No, I think most people are well aware.
No, yeah, that's exactly what I mean when I'm talking about the fifth.
Yeah,
like almost word for word. What I mean.
Yeah,
you're not literally implicating yourself, but it does appear suspicious because why wouldn't you answer the question if you weren't going to implicate yourself?
Yeah.
Now it might just be
which is something different, like when police pull you over and
yes,
they say, I don't answer questions.
Yeah.
Am I suspected of committing a crime? Is there some articulable, whatever, where
Yes.
people get into the legalese of it?
Well, and
a lot of times I've seen that work, but
also the threshold for what a police officer is looking for versus what a criminal court is looking for are not the same thing.
Correct.
Right? So you're under different circumstances there.
So Harbaugh clearly isn't interested in what we think.
No.
Otherwise,
Has
he would
ever been?
Otherwise, he would just answer the question differently.
Yeah. He's never struck me as a guy that is interested in what people think. He would dress different if he was.
No, he would. That'd be the last thing.
If he
would
cared
change.
what people think, he would dress different. That's a real thing. If he cared what people think, he would dress different.
I watched this guy in khakis and in gloves warm up with the players.
Yeah.
And I looked at Sharp and basically we were trying to find out if another receiver was playing. Sharpie has the eagle eyes, but we just watched him warm up.
Mm-hmm.
And I get it, like they'll show clips and stuff in pregame on television, but when you watch it real time, he'll go over to probably 3 or 4 position groups.
Yeah.
He may kick step and slide protection and work a little one-on-ones. He may go catch passes. He may go back there and get a punt. Like, dude
he's a football junkie.
Yeah.
But
I don't mind.
Does not care what people think. Has never cared what people think. And I do think, because of what Anthony said, that this was sort of his hand-picked successor at Michigan.
Anthony Broome from the First Hour from On 3.
Correct.
Michigan On 3.
If you missed it, go get the podcast. But if there is anything that he does care about, I do think he cares about Michigan.
Yeah.
As a place, and about Sharon Moore as kind of his successor.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the thing he chose to care about was not making it worse for them. Right. And by just being like, I didn't know anything about it, I think that's what he did.
How long did it take last year between the doc coming out and actual levied penalties? It seemed like it was months.
It was at least a month, maybe 2.
It seemed longer than that. But
okay,
I mean,
just so about how long the season is, though, right? I mean, it couldn't have been more than 3.
Okay, so let's say it's that long.
Yeah.
No, because we heard about it in the offseason. Right? I mean, he came to Big Ten Media Days
Yeah.
addressing the allegations.
Okay, you're right.
So it was like a month before that.
So like 4 then, I think.
Okay, maybe.
I think it was about 4.
So if it's a similar timeline,
mm-hmm.
Are they going to expedite it to have any penalties against Moore this year? Because
I don't think
the season starts in like 3 weeks.
So unless it is,
it's late in the game, is my point.
Right, for it to matter this year.
Yeah.
In terms of actual penalties. But there's a couple differences here. One, the NCAA didn't issue any actual penalties on the Stallions thing last year.
Mm-hmm.
The penalties from the NCAA last year were COVID related. The Big Ten suspension was for the Stallion stuff. So the NCAA investigations always take longer, judging by the fact that we were serving COVID penalties in 2024 when the COVID season was 2020, right? So we're talking 3 years down the line at this point that they finally got the penalties out for COVID. So yes, we're not likely to see Sharon Moore penalties for this or any Michigan staff penalties for this year. I think that's incredibly unlikely.
Mm-hmm.
What I do think is a possibility, because one of the things that Harbaugh did an incredible job of last year was not letting those distractions affect the on-field.
Yeah,
pretty spectacular, right? Is that something they can replicate this year with, frankly,
but I think this, yes,
a team that's lost a lot.
Yeah. Do you know why I think they'll be equally successful, but equally equipped?
Why is that?
Because nobody thinks much of them. So they'll find a way to compartmentalize and I mean, did you see that? Everything about their demeanor
mm-hmm.
in Indianapolis said that they did not give me the appearance of the defending champs.
No,
they gave me the impression of a team that's kind of pissy.
Yeah, because and no one, like you said,
you know what I mean?
I do. Yeah, because no one thinks much of them, but I also think there's a reason no one thinks much of them. Like, they did lose a lot. They lost, and not just in players. Losing Jim Harbaugh matters. Like, he's a really good football coach.
Yeah. Although did he miss 6 games last year?
Yeah, but he still coached. He was there all the practices the entire year, right?
Okay.
So I mean that matters. I think his presence matters in terms of handling a lot of these things. I think he's a first-year head coach handling all this versus a guy that's been around a lot like Jim Harbaugh. I think there's going to be a big difference there.
Yeah, even though Moore's been his right-hand man.
Right, but it's still different being in the big chair, right?
Sure. I just don't know. I'm not going to debate the degrees, but I mean,
I guess I think there's a world in which this season
more carries I don't know, and I'm not there every day. He strikes me as having some very similar. His demeanor is similar
to Harbaugh's.
Yeah, in terms of stick to the task at hand, Michigan man. Like, everything about what they talked about was like the Michigan way, the Michigan thing. And I don't know. There's some similar, because the common language like that, it's not only accountability, but it keeps the target similar.
Sure.
It's not about the other stuff.
I just think with another round of distractions, with a guy that hasn't been
you don't have a quarterback near is poised.
Yeah, you don't. I mean,
experienced? I'm sorry.
I don't even. I mean, we assume it's going to be Alex Orji. I don't know. We don't even know who the quarterback is really.
Yeah.
You're losing Blake Corum. You've got some really good guys on defense still, and obviously you've recruited reasonably well although not as well as some people think the last few years. You're going to have a level of talent here, but I also think there's a world in which this thing could get away from them if they can't keep their arms around it. If they can't keep their arms around the distractions and everything else, and you're losing a bunch, I do think there's a way in which the season gets away from them.
Yeah, I'm cheering for Michigan if nothing else. Then I want to make life extremely as complicated as can be for Ohio State. I just don't want anybody in this conference running away with anything in terms of dominance. I like balance, right? It's kind of like my weather. So I want Michigan to continue
to give Ohio State fits.
Yeah.
But what's balance look like because let's say Michigan doesn't get a beat, then aren't they in danger of running away from the rest of the league?
No, because I don't know about historically, Michigan has gone in waves. I think Ohio State has been a little more consistent in that regard. And Ohio State still recruits at a level unlike almost anybody else in the conference.
Yeah, Oregon now, and recently.
And because remember, we talk about Oregon like they've been.
No, just the last couple of years have they recruited like this.
Because Oregon's been good since, you could
almost
make
25 years.
Yeah. Right.
I mean, you had Achilles Smith, and then they were a little bit of a gap.
So even that 09, 10, 11, 12, that run.
Yeah, the Dennis Dixon.
They weren't recruiting at an elite level yet.
No. So they weren't recruiting at an elite level until Cristobal, I would say.
So I don't think, in danger. And I do think Lanning obviously is really good.
Yeah. And he does recruit at an elite level.
So it's like, has Oregon done this before? So it's the lesser of two. And that's what I'm thinking about. I'm like, is this the lesser of two evils? Would I pick Oregon or Ohio State? If somebody was going to own the conference in recruiting, would I pick Oregon or would I pick Ohio State? Who do I think is more? So in my head, I pick Oregon.
Ohio State scares me more than Oregon, but Lanning scares me more than Ryan Day. Is that fair?
I don't know if okay.
I don't know.
Oregon scares you.
No, Ohio State scares me more than Oregon, but Lanning scares me more than Day.
For this year or long-term success?
In general. Ohio State.
Well, history says you're probably right.
Ohio State as a program scares me more.
You're probably right.
But Dan Lanning as a coach scares me more.
Yeah.
And as a recruiter. Like, I know Ryan Day recruits at a super high level, but I think Ohio State could go out and upgrade over Ryan Day. I don't think Oregon's upgrading over Dan Lanning.
So if Ohio State doesn't have success, their success relative to what they want, I mean, they could not be in the conference.
100%.
I mean, are you assuming like they just get another good coach? Because I want as much shakeup in Columbus as possible.
I think Ohio State could go out and get a coach that's theoretically better than Ryan Day. In terms of, I mean, yeah, just from a national profile, I think they could beat what they've got.
It's going to be interesting.
Mike Schaefer from Husker 24/7 coming up next here on Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. Welcome to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Kicking off hour number 3 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, KFOR in Lincoln for this third hour. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla, reminding you to get to hurrdatsports.com to order your Hill Varsity Football Yearbook for 2024. Secure your copy between now and August 11th. That's just through Sunday. Make sure you get your orders in for exclusive interviews, position breakdowns, one-of-a-kind photos, and more. Make your order at hurrdatsports.com. Do we have Schaefer yet?
Not yet.
Okay. We will get Mike J. Schaefer here in just a minute as we effort him from 24/7 Sports. It was, I don't know. The Michigan thing's really interesting to me.
As you just saw, the no apologies from Harbaugh on television.
It's
I'm busy watching old school Blackhawks and Pens, man. Tommy Barrasso, and that's a young Jaromir Jagr, boy.
We were kind of continuing our conversation off air. I think we'd agree in terms of keeping everybody kind of close to the pack. We'd both rather see Michigan than Ohio State be good. I think Penn State's kind of in the same boat.
I just think
as
Ohio
Michigan
State's capable of recruiting on a much more elite level
than
Michigan. But Moore is actually, he's changed the profile though, so maybe it is Michigan.
The one that scares me as much as Ohio State, at least right now, is Oregon.
I get it.
Because
they won without recruiting at an elite level.
Right, and now they are recruiting at an elite level, and they've got a really good, really young head coach. And
because when was Auburn, Oregon? Was that 12?
Auburn, Oregon was 11. It was 11, or maybe 10.
I don't know. It was Cam Newton's one great year.
I think
I
should
know.
I think it was 2010 was Cam Newton, because they were back in 2013 with Gus Malzahn after they had gotten rid of Gene Chizik because then they played Florida State.
I watched 21 running back for Auburn. Was it Porter? Trey Mason.
Okay.
I watched Gus Malzahn and that Auburn team.
Mm-hmm.
Can't remember who was at quarterback for Auburn. 14.
Is Nick's?
Yep. That's
Nick something.
Yep.
Oh shoot.
That offense was so good.
Oh, I loved watching that offense.
Gus Malzahn was nice, and they had who was the tall, fast wide receiver Auburn had? All of this runs together. He ended up getting drafted. It wasn't Corey Davis. It was they threw him the ball 3 times a game, and it was always
Nick Marshall was the quarterback.
Yeah, that was the quarterback.
Yeah.
Give me the whiteout.
Let me see here.
Big, strong. What do you wear? 80, maybe?
80. Marcus Davis?
No, give me another one.
Quan Bray?
Nope.
Sammy Coates?
Yep.
Sammy Coates.
Yeah.
18.
18. Coates ended up getting drafted.
Yeah, Sammy Coates was good. He was
I'm
nasty.
these guys are kind of tough.
Yeah.
I just was looking at the bind that they would put the safeties in.
Yeah, so the number of things that they could do and the amount of misdirection. And
just Marshall was just kind of a shaky passer, but
more than kind of.
Man, they would take some shot plays.
If Marshall if he had a quarterback that year that could throw at all, they would have been unstoppable.
Yeah.
I mean, that team was really hard to deal with anyway because of all the window dressing and everything that was distracting to a defense.
That'd be the perfect team. We used to have to do it with Miller North and stuff where you got to go no ball.
Yeah. Just keep your assignment.
Yep.
Yeah. Stay in your lane. Keep your assignment.
Inside. No Schaefer yet? Chill?
Not yet.
What is Mike J doing?
I don't know.
Wait, was there media? No, it's early. No media availability.
Until 10:30, I think.
He's logging in now.
I think you could get there at 10.
Okay. But I think they start.
Yeah, but was there media availability today?
I believe there is, yeah.
Mike's here now.
I need to go back and look at old man's email.
Joining us now is our guy, Mike J. Schaefer from Husker 24/7. Schaefer, what's up, man?
Not a ton. Apologies for being a little bit late. There is a media availability. It's not for basically it starts in an hour or so. Coaches, and then we'll get players a little bit closer to noon.
Hey, so is that easier from a deadline standpoint or to get stuff finished up that there's such a gap in between?
Working from the internet, we don't believe in deadlines. There's just a continuous clock that always runs.
Because they said it could be as much as an hour in between, right?
Yeah. I would rather have it all at once, and then you sort of can decipher and decide what is newsy and what you want to put out there and whatever it is you want to do. Ultimately, I don't know that it matters a ton. I mean, from an efficiency standpoint, I would rather have everything, at one time and then get it all done. I'd rather have if I have my way, I'd rather have everyone talk at the exact same time, dispersed throughout the building. So that way, we wouldn't have 75 people sitting in a room, but only 6 of them ask questions. So that would be more of, what I'm thinking.
Hey,
I love a rule that you can't, record an interview unless you ask 2 questions. That'd be great. I had a really great Bryce Benhart 4-minute interview that a bunch of people just have on camera that I turned to him and I asked her, do you have anything you'd like to ask Bryce? Just dead silence. It's embarrassing. It's embarrassing.
I love this, Schaefer. When it's not at my expense. Mike J, so would you like to see the players' interview streamed? I know they're going to be released on the other on the platform, but are you cool with? I kind of think that's a good idea.
Yeah, no, I'm not like opposed to as many people who want to be there that have credentials should be there. It's just feel free to ask questions. Like, it's not my job to do the interview for you. It's not my job to ask 15 questions because you don't know who's sitting there because you either can't read a placard or you're busy looking at your phone. You're not even paying attention to the person that's talking. Like, I get it. Like, you're laughing right now, but it is seriously, there are some people that are incredibly disrespectful.
I've seen it. They're there. Yeah. It's almost like people are there to say that they were there.
They're there to be seen, or in some cases, and I get this too, like, some of the younger people, some of the people at the Daily Nebraska, and some people that are just getting their first opportunity, it can be really intimidating. I get that. But not asking questions doesn't allow you to learn any information. And believe me, I've asked a ton of terrible questions. I've asked questions where it sounds like I've never even spoke English before. Like, but you got to get past that. Like, in order to, for anyone who's like scared to ask a question, just do it. Some of the veterans ask some of the dumbest questions imaginable. I know, I am one of them. I ask some really stupid stuff. But you know what? Sometimes you learn some good things in there. Sometimes you get Jamal Banks talking about, what his experience was coming into an entirely new program. I'm trying to think of one of the questions I asked him when I got done in my head. I'm like, this is stupid. He's going to laugh at this. Instead, I got a really good answer. I mean, so you never know what you're going to get. So, yeah, I mean, this is a trademark me ranting thing. But at the same time, like, if we're all there and there's so many of us, and there really, really are, we could take advantage of that by having lots of different people ask different questions and giving us different perspectives instead of just, standing there with our cameras and waiting for someone else to do the work.
Hey, Schaefer, let's stay with Banks here for a second, because I think that wide receiving core has a lot of versatility, potentially, and some depth potentially. If you allowed yourself to kind of envision, if the passing game looks like this, I like this receiver. If it looks like this, I like this receiver, because they have options. But if you asked me who their leading receiver was going to be, I think I went with catches. I think I went with Fedoni, but I don't even love that answer. But you got a lot of options. If you're trying to predict catches, you could have 5 guys with 30 catches maybe.
Yeah, that's my favorite thing about this wide receiver room. It's part of why I'm as excited about this team as I am. I don't know that there's just an easy, we just got to go stop that guy. I don't think that exists with Nebraska's offense. I think, one, if you believe the way that I do, that Dylan has significant arm talent, there are throws that he can make that are going to make Jalen Lloyd incredibly dangerous. There's throws that he can make that are going to make Isaiah Nair incredibly dangerous. There's throws that he can allow guys to go high point the ball in tough parts where it's just you can't defend it. Like, there's throws that he can make to the far side of the field that allow that speed. We saw in the spring game, they ran some of these drag routes. Like, it's going to be really tough to turn and run with Jalen Lloyd, Malachi Coleman, and Isaiah Nair all the way across the field. And you've got to do that how many times a game? Like, they can let those guys get rest. I mean, you can bring in the next wave of wide receivers. I mean, I couldn't sit here and tell you who I think is going to be the leading receiver this year. I'm with you. I think Fedoni is going to have the most receptions. I kind of think Jalen Lloyd, by virtue of the big play, could have the most yards. That doesn't necessarily mean either of those two are Nebraska's most important wide receiver, though. Like, that's the thing. They have a lot of different options. They have a lot of different body types. They have a lot of different guys that can affect the game in different ways. And I think they have a facilitator who, hasn't been named as a starting quarterback yet, but I think they have a facilitator in Dylan Raiola that can really enhance that too. It makes it
they're going to be able to match guys up too. Like, because you heard Coach White in his answers say exactly what he got from the offense. Hey, Coach White, what's one of the things that you want to be able to do better this year? And he talked about taking the ball away or whatever. And he's like, I want to be able to match receivers better, right? Like, I don't want to get ISO'd and have this guy have to defend this guy. Conversely, that's exactly what I think Coach Satterfield and those guys want to do. Somebody's going to work mano-a-mano or get the bracket coverage, and somebody else is going to be able to go to work.
In theory, I mean, Nebraska has a multitude of different ways to attack you through the air in different parts of the field. I mean, that's, again, part of why last year's passing game, yes, the quarterbacks struggled. Yes, they didn't have necessarily the wide receiver pieces, but it's compounded by the fact that you couldn't really attack down the field because you just didn't feel like you could accurately put the ball down there without sort of that option pass play to kind of spring it loose. And then you weren't great intermediate. So teams can sit on your short routes. Teams can take that away, and they're daring you to throw the ball down the field. And Nebraska just couldn't for much of the month of November.
Schaefer, is it possible that Jamal Banks doesn't lead the team in receptions, touchdowns, or yards, but is still their most important receiver?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's possible. I think his attitude is infectious. I think he's a really unique guy. I think his perspective on stuff is really good.
He's like an old man. He's like an old, clever man.
I really appreciated one of the answers that he gave last week was he talked about how he knew when he got here he was going to be expected to be a leader, but he talked about how it was important for him to not talk when he first arrived. It was all about observing and watching. Maybe if he did talk, it was asking questions. It was sitting back and sort of learning personalities, learning what was happening. And then he's like, instead of talking, for Isaiah and I, we just went out and worked. We were first ones in, last ones out. We spent a lot of time in the weight room. We spent a lot of time in the film room. When we did talk, we asked questions. So it was a good insight into the way that he approached things. And I promise you, that's not how everyone comes in from the transfer portal. Some guys come in and they want to tell you everything they've ever done somewhere else with people that you don't know and you don't care about because ultimately it doesn't matter.
Yeah, there's a guy along the D line that tried that and it didn't go over so well. So they had to start over. And now he's coincidentally starting to flourish. But that's pretty astute.
Well, that would have been a pretty easy spot to do it too at the wide receivers where you're like, oh, you guys didn't do anything last year. Let me go ahead and do this.
I got this.
Instead, he's just there. I'm there to watch. I'm there to observe. I'm there to see what Garrett McGuire has to say. I'm there to learn as much as I possibly can. And then I'm there to show these other guys what it's like to work. And I think that was a big thing. I think both he and Isaiah Nair really kind of showed, okay, this is what we're doing when no one's looking. This is, and you guys are looking because you're watching to see who we are and what we're like. But this is who we are every day. This is who we are when we're in the film room. This is who we are when we're in the weight room. This is who we are when we're on the practice field. And I really feel like that attitude rubbed off on guys like Ja'Cory Barney, who just got here, rubbed off on guys like Jalen Lloyd and Malachi Coleman, who have aspirations to be really good players, but haven't done quite yet what Isaiah Nair or, Jamal Banks have done in their career. So I really appreciated how open he was with his process because it's different. And I know that guys over there appreciate that too, because it's really easy, like I said, for a transfer portal player to come in. And when you get them from some of the bigger programs, I know Wake Forest isn't one of the bigger ones, but go look at what Wake's offense has done. Go look at the games Jamal Banks has played in. He's played in bigger games than Nebraska has. And it'd be easy to come in and talk. And he didn't. He came in, he watched, he listened, and he worked.
We're talking with Mike Schaefer.
I think the interesting thing is Nair only has like 50 career catches.
Yeah, they were all that sophomore year at Wyoming, basically.
Yeah, I think that was 44 of them.
Yeah. Was pretty much his whole year. But you could also talk me into the fact that Isaiah Nair might be the best receiver on the team.
Yeah, I don't know.
I think it's fool's gold to try to figure it out right now.
Yeah, me too. I'm going to chill on that one.
Because I
don't necessarily think that's a hot take, but I need to give that a sec. Although I have said out loud on numerous occasions, he's a Sunday guy. So I guess I'm saying there might be multiple Sunday guys because Nair's definitely one.
You know how one of our favorite radio topics, and we're all radio guys here, is does Nebraska need a running back to establish themselves as the number one? Yeah. Does Nebraska need a wide receiver or tight end to establish itself as a top target? I don't think they do. No. I think they can just take you down by all the different weapons that they have, all the different ways that they can play you, all the different formations and all the different routes that they can run. I don't think they need a number one.
I do know 3rd and 5. If they're in 10 or 11 personnel, I would find 24. I do know that. Like,
sure.
I would.
I mean, there aren't pet plays or pet situations for these guys.
I'd take that guy away. So let me ask you something, Schaefer, because the wide receiver talk is interesting, and I remember how bullish Coach Rule was on Coach McGuire. And remember, that was the one press conference where he kind of came out and slapped the critics' wrists because he felt like McGuire was being used against them on the recruiting trail. Do you remember that presser that he had? And he's like, he's going to be a great coach. And I think Dvorak is the other. They seem like the two guys that if their groups have big years or productive development years, they're the next two guys that are capable of dominating the recruiting trail because of their personalities. Do you see that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, I've enjoyed every conversation I've had with Rob Dvorak.
He's fantastic.
He's very, very easy to talk to. Sometimes, you get into these conversations with coaches and whether you're at a media event or when they had us at Occidental, or you just run into them because Lincoln's not that big, which ones are like actually engaged in a conversation and which ones are just ready for the conversation to be over so they can get over to whatever they're doing. And he's a guy that engages. He's definitely going to hold a conversation with you. He's going to have he's not going to talk at you. He's not going to talk through you. He's going to talk with you. And I think that is always going to resonate with players. And I think Garrett McGuire is a lot of the same way. And I think both of those guys have incredible work ethics, which is part of why they're going to be successful in recruiting. Some of recruiting is being able to reach and understand young people and be on their level. Another part of it is being willing to do it and do it and do it. And both of those guys work. And obviously in a Matt Rule staff, that's one of the first things he's looking for. You got to work or you're not going to work out with him.
Yeah, Dvorak just strikes me as the type of guy. The analogy that I make is the guy or gal that is all of a sudden a millionaire, but started with the least. Like, I just look at what he's had to work with, and it's no disrespect, right? But he had guys that weren't either originally playing the position or had or moved or weren't highly thought of ahead of time or getting them off injury. Like his finish. Like what he's been able to do, I think he's had the least amount to work with as a starting point. I don't know. If
do you think that plays into sort of who he is? I mean, he was a guy that played football.
Okay, so that's a good point, right? Like maybe he's not maybe that's what he gravitates towards because that's who he is as a person. Right.
Well, I'm just thinking maybe that's why he's able to reach him. Maybe that's why Javen Wright can go have a big year for him. Maybe that's why Mekhi Bayer can step in a big moment and go play. Because they've got a coach who's been in that situation where no one really thought that he was going to be what he is.
And it's great you use Javen Wright as an example because Saturday night when I was talking to Coach Dvorak, who was he standing there having an in-depth conversation with? Of course, it was Tony White. And the way that those guys have been able to tag team a guy like Javen Wright who needed a little buy-in, right? Like, wait a minute, you're going to full time, you want me to play on the second level. I've got to get bigger. It's loud in there. Like it can get dark in there sometimes. You guys, and to watch them both, like I said, tag team that, like those are the things that like a lot of times alphas aren't willing to do, but because of the characteristics that you described about like Dvorak, he's okay with that because it's about the person and not him.
Yeah. I mean, we talked last week and you talked about how Jamari Butler looked like $1 million. I mean, Javen Wright, the weight that he put on, what he looked like, the photo that Michael Brunts just keeps passing around on Husker 24/7, where he's just got this hulking bicep and the half cut 33. And I mean, he does not look out of place on that second level right now. I mean, that's a guy that I'm really excited about seeing what 2024 has in store for him. He's someone that's just a football junkie. He spent a lot of time in the film room. He seems like he's got a lot going on between the ears, and now he's physically in
good natured too.
Yeah,
Great
he's got a
person.
lot. He's got a lot going for him physically too. It's the longest run of extended health he's been on. He's the biggest that he's been. He feels like he's scratching the surface of the player that he's always wanted to be, but hasn't quite been at this point in his career. He's definitely someone I'm excited to see in 2024.
We're talking with Mike Schaefer, Husker 24/7. Is there anybody else that you are particularly excited or that you're looking forward to seeing in 2024 besides Javen Wright? And let's go non-newcomer here.
Yeah, I mean, I want to see. There's a lot of talk about Justin Evans. I want to see what that looks like at the guard position. I mean, some of them are easy, right? Like, what does Thomas Fedoni look like when he gets to be healthy and he gets the full off season? I mean, it's kind of easy to sit here and go through some of the narratives. What does a Deshaun Singleton that's healthy look like, who looked like he was coming on strong last year? Does Tommy Hill have the ability to carry over the last 8 games of last season and make it a full, Nebraska hopes for 14 games in 2024? I mean, so those are some of the names that jump off right away. And then I can go a little bit deeper cut. As the guy who was basically driving the bandwagon for Riley Van Poppel from March of 2022 to currently where we are now, and a guy who thinks that there's not going to be that big of a drop-off when Riley Van Poppel comes in for a Ty Robinson or, late in the game. Like, I want to see that defensive line. Pick any defensive line member, and that is probably the unit I'm most excited about. I think that's Nebraska's best unit. I think that's going to be Nebraska's best unit for a while. And I think there's some guys in there that are ready to have big seasons, maybe not statistically big seasons, but are just going to blow stuff up. I think Nebraska has the potential to really control the trenches if those guys play to where I think they can be.
It's so fitting, since we're talking about Dvorak, that the guy that I was going to say no one ever talks about, and it's Bullock. Like, and now Tommy Hill's the other interesting one, because he's had an off season where he's carrying 20 more pounds than he did a year ago, and he met all his weight. Like, I would.
He doesn't run like he's carrying 20 more pounds.
No, I know. And Schaefer, I told this to Ravi off air because we use the decks. Anyway, he was a guy that we were modeling weight gain after, and there were times he played in the high 170s last year.
Yeah, I can believe
high
it.
170s. But Bullock's a guy that I want to see because he has such command of this defense, and he's a really good athlete. Like, I want to see. Bullock's a guy that would be on that list for me.
That's Mike Schaefer, Husker 24/7. Schaefer, we appreciate the time as always. We will talk to you next week.
All right, guys. Sorry about being late.
You're good, Schaefer.
More Hurrdat Sports Radio coming up next.
We will be back. 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 You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Back here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, KFOR, and Lincoln. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla here on the Pillar Exterior stage. Appreciate our guy, Mike Schaefer. Good stuff there from him. Wanted to go.
I kind of understood what he was saying about it's more of a side session versus main PC thing.
Yeah, about people asking questions and stuff.
Yeah,
I could see the frustration for sure. I really can.
On the side sessions or in the main?
In general, I can see the frustration in both. I would be much like personally, and again, I'm probably more of the perpetrator here than just because I never ask questions during press conferences. I haven't been to a ton of Nebraska ones. I have been to a ton of Creighton ones. And I kind of just like to see people's demeanors and stuff like that because it doesn't always translate in the quotes, right? So seeing how guys react to questions, getting their tone, that type of thing, I think does change how I feel about answers. There's a really good example of the Nebraska Creighton game when Tim Miles beat Creighton in Lincoln. And Greg McDermott there was this big story about Greg McDermott calling Nebraska desperate going into that game. And it wasn't disparaging at all in the room. No one took it that way. And then it ran and was this whole thing that he was talking down to Nebraska's program. Nebraska had come off of several losses in a row and they needed that win. He's like, yeah, I just thought they were more desperate. It was almost an indictment on Creighton more than it was on Nebraska, and it became a whole thing. But if
I
you're not in the
remember.
room and hear that, you don't know. You just see the quotes and you're like, oh man, what a jerk, whatever, right? So there is value to being in the room. I get that for sure. I would get more frustrated on the side sessions that are more informal. And if somebody is just kind of lurking and then uses that to make content, I could see that being frustrating for sure. But I also understand the value of being there for the things I just talked about, but also like there is a value of being seen because you're making the commitment to the university to cover them and that you care about what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And so there are advantages to that as somebody in the media.
And SIDs will reward that.
Yeah, they do. They appreciate when people show up to their stuff.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's a very different perspective of being like a radio guy versus a print guy. And by print, I mean, websites, anything in writing, right? It's just a different thing. And maybe that's because I'm a guy that doesn't ask questions. So I'm kind of, but I also.
And sometimes I do and sometimes I don't.
Yeah. If I don't have a question, I'm not going to make one up just to ask a question.
Well, I'm right there with you.
Like I have a hard time, but I also understand if you're Schaefer and you're there every day, year after year after year, and you're one of 3 people asking questions,
like
how
those
that could get frustrating.
And maybe it's just, from like the post games and stuff, like being down there. I don't remember asking a question.
Yeah.
Now I have occasionally at other times. But I don't. Sometimes I'm kind of with you on if I don't have anything good to ask,
I'm not going to.
I'm not going to.
I will say,
and I would never go first because just some people need always ask the first questions.
Well, and it's like I try and defer to the people that it is their job. I feel like the press conferences are much more important to people in print, because they're going to write a story about either the game or the press conference itself, whereas I'm just using it for context, right? I'm using it for content and like, oh, maybe he said something interesting here. We'll turn that into a segment. But I'm not that's not the main part of my job.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to defer to the people because, again, you're also generally on limited time. It's not like Coach Rule may stay up there forever if you let him, but most people won't, right? It's like, hey, you've got this amount of time. They're going to allow this amount of questions. So if I'm somebody who doesn't need to ask a question, I'm taking that away from somebody who might.
And that's where Keith and Rob and Seamus and these guys are really good, in my opinion, because they have a good feel for the room.
Yeah.
Is this smooth? Is this? Wait, are the questions? Is it getting a little too contentious?
Is it getting away from
Is it?
Yeah.
Is there too much silence in between questions?
We're not doing football stuff. Yeah. Whatever, right? And so they read the room really, really well. But there's also other SIDs, mostly that I've seen through, I guess exclusively that I've seen through going to Creighton ones, that they're going to be short with you, especially they're coming in, especially if their coach is lost. You're getting 3-4 questions off. And for a long time now, the Big East has had high-profile coaches. So I don't really feel like it's my place to go in there and ask questions when I know you're only getting a handful off, and people like, our friend Jacob Padilla or Matt DeMarinis or whoever are going to have to write about this, and they need something more than I do.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it's not like we have unlimited time with these guys either, especially when it's the visiting or opposing coaches.
And some people go for it's like Sauter just said, sometimes you just want video.
Yeah. Because you want to own the video, right? So if you're going down there, let's say, on our socials, we'll clip stuff out. We'll turn it into other social media posts, stuff like that. It's a million times easier to do if it's your video.
Yep.
And you're not going to, Nebraska's website and trying to download it and do it your own thing. If you've just got the raw file there, way easier to do all that stuff. So there's a lot of reasons to go to press conferences without asking any questions. Spoken from a guy who never asked any questions.
Some people just want to be seen.
No, that is for sure.
But like I said, there is value to that too.
Yeah.
Again,
no broad brushes here. It just depends on who you are.
Yeah. I mean, some people need it, some people don't. And I'm just happy to be there.
Weird that I know the outcome of this game, and I'm going to say that sucky Blackhawks just scored again.
Yeah. Unlike another team from Chicago that's sucky that can't ever score.
You see how small the goaltending pads used to be?
Yeah, they used to be little. You used to actually have to save stuff.
Tom Barrasso looks like Shane's size back there.
You used to actually have to,
By the way, you should have gotten pulled.
Be a goaltender and not just be like, hey, look how big my pads are. Although they limit it now, don't they?
Yeah,
There's
a little
like
bit. Yeah.
There's a limit.
Are you vibing with me on Bullock?
Oh, Bullock's really important.
So I just look at
he's also really athletic.
So when I'm saying like the ammo to go out on the road,
mm-hmm.
if this was a year removed, right? And let's say Bear has a good year, Bullock has a good year, Javen Wright has a good year,
mm-hmm.
and Christian Jones is in the 2026s.
Mm-hmm.
Resume looks different.
Sure. For
right?
Dvorak.
Right.
Yeah.
You don't care.
You got the track record of.
Yeah. You're like, hey, we already have a good relationship. We get along really well. And you're turning guys out because what people sleep on, and again, it's no disrespect. I mean, Reimer came in as a safety.
Yeah.
He's not a natural inside guy. Nick Henrich was never healthy.
Yeah.
Right. So
the fact that they got anything out of Nick Henrich last year is a miracle.
Bear was almost left for dead.
I mean, I would say he was left for dead.
Okay.
Yeah.
Dusted him off, got him ready to go.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think what Dvorak has been able to do.
Mm-hmm.
Go ask Shavers
even
Jr.
Bullock. Like,
go ask Shavers. No, Bullock, I know. And Bullock was just getting started.
Yeah.
He was just getting started. And I guarantee if you sit down and talk to Bullock, he is exceptionally bright. And people will give me the eye roll. Oh, the heady white. No. Dude's explosive.
Mm-hmm.
He's jumping 35 inches. He's going to standing broad jump. I'm going to short him. High 9s, maybe 10. Like testing wise, he's a lot in that Gifford category.
Mm-hmm.
Can high point balls, is really, so it's no knock on his athleticism. So when you combine, because so much of that inside, I talk about this with Foreman all the time, especially in an odd front.
Well, it's like seeing it, right?
Yes. And shooting your shot. Like
once you see it go.
And sometimes it's a feel thing. So we got into it a little bit when we talked about gapping guys out the other day, and I kind of got giddy, and I was like, yes and no, right? Some of it is, cloudy clear, or if I want to hit it, split it, or whatever the terminology you're using, where can I beat this puller? If I beat these pullers and I get underneath, can I still set the edge? Or will this turn into a little bit of a spill? Where is it based on where a head is? Is it inside? Is it outside? I know his head should be inside.
When to take chances a little bit.
Right.
Yeah.
So that was kind of the thing that I felt like Reimer and those guys were growing into, because they weren't natural insides. And then you use natural insides behind an odd front or odd concepts. And by odd, I don't mean strange. I mean
odd front.
Yes.
Yeah, odd number.
It's even tougher. There's a reason why Ray Lewis didn't like playing in the 3-4. He wanted to go back to the 4-3. Right? It's just different with guards and trust. And
your reads are going to be different, right?
A year into this with Bullock savvy and making he'll make that play against Iowa.
Yeah.
He just will. He'll be more confident. He'll trust. Like I'm,
because you have to see it, and then you have to trust what you see.
And then you'll be able to start being able to go get guys. It's like, because
that's the difference between, a 4-yard gain and a 2-yard loss, right?
Yeah.
Is if you trust your eye, if you see it and you trust your eyes, and then you shoot your shot.
A split second is the difference between not allowing a guy to read a pull.
Yeah.
And a 6-yard gain like Michigan would have.
Right.
Right? Because I remember early on in that broadcast, I'm like, I feel like Nebraska's fitting in the run game better than the results.
Yeah.
They just were a little late.
They just were a little hesitant to go for it. Coming up next, we're going to talk Ohio State football with their play-by-play voice here on Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We will be back. will be back. We will be back. We will be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Wrapping up the show here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, KFOR in Lincoln. We are joined now by Paul Keels. He's the play-by-play voice for Ohio State football. Paul, how are you this morning? Oh, almost there. Paul, how are you this morning?
Good. How you doing?
There's that voice. Good morning, Paul.
Hey, how's it going, guys?
Good, good.
Paul, I'm going to jump right in here with you. Obviously, it's a big year for Ohio State football. Got some transition, not only at the quarterback spot, but with the offensive coordinator and play calling duties as well. What's your biggest question mark for Ohio State this year?
Well, there's probably two of them, and one of them hopefully will get an answer pretty soon, and that would be the quarterback position.
Yeah.
A lot of the prevailing thought right now, and they're only a week into practice, but that Will Howard, who transferred in from Kansas State, will most likely be the starting quarterback. The other big question is going to be right guard. Their offensive line was a little bit of an Achilles heel at times last year, so there's kind of a pretty good-sized battle going on between really three people at the right guard spot. So those are probably, as far as the positions on the field, the biggest questions with this team going into their summer practice and the start of the season.
I hate to go back to it, but it's, a couple months ago, Urban Meyer talked about the roster and maybe the best ever, and you get Tyleek to come back and Sawyer and Ransom, and it is loaded. Like, don't get me wrong, but you've seen so much with this Buckeye team. When you look at this roster, do you personally allow it to change your expectation level? Or for you, is it like, hey, you know what? This is the Ohio State. We expect to have a good roster. Does this feel different for you?
Well, you're right. The expectations are always big. It does feel different, and a lot of it because of those guys who opted to come back. You know, you mentioned Jack Sawyer, Tyleek Williams, Jalen Tuimoloau, Denzel Burke, a lot of guys that could have cast their lot to try and go professional. So that has a lot to do with it, as well as the additions they made through the portal with guys like Quinshon Judkins and Caleb Downs and Will Howard, as well as Seth McLaughlin, who's probably going to be the starting center. So there certainly is a different feel. I think because of what they've done, because of the additions, because of the returns, and also the motivation they have to reach a goal that they haven't reached here in a while.
So, Paul, you mentioned the expectations. I would imagine with the expanded playoff, making the playoff is just almost a must now, not even not even a goal. It's just sort of a given at this point. Like, what's your vibe on the expectations for Ohio State in this new world of the expanded college football playoff?
Well, and I think it even changed back before when you had, the 4-team playoff. But, winning the Big Ten championship would be important because that's something they haven't done in 3 years. Getting to the Big Ten championship game and winning it, to be able to, especially now that there's no longer division, so you can't even claim a division title. But being able to do that, get a bye going into the playoffs, and then be able to make a run into the postseason to have a chance at winning a national championship. So, their goals are all stair-stepped. Included in that, I should say, is doing something they haven't done in 3 years, and that's beating their arch rival, Michigan. So there's a lot of layers to it, but those are kind of the goals that this team has. But as you said, there's always big expectations at Ohio State.
His record is significantly better and win percentage than Coach Cooper, but there are some Coach Coop feels, right, with the lack of success against Michigan. Do you like Coach Day's temperament in terms of how he's had to deal with, for all intents and purposes, he wins a ton, you make playoff appearances and runs. There is the Michigan thing, and I'm not dismissing it. I'm saying, do you like his temperament to deal with two things being true at once? We have a high level of success.
Absolutely.
We play a lot of meaningful postseason games, but yeah, there's Michigan.
Absolutely. And, Ryan Day is one of those that, you think about how it all started for him, really. He turned a lot of heads when he was the acting head coach for 3 games prior to being named the permanent head coach. There was really a feeling that if Ohio State did not hire him, he was going to be hired by somebody else to be a head coach. So the way he's handled all of that, I think certainly the way he handled the pandemic year and the way that he really stumped to get football back when the Big Ten initially was not going to stage a football season. But how he's handled all of that, he knows, and he continues to make the comment, if you think there's not pressure with having that job, just try losing a game at Ohio State. And certainly and any game, but certainly the realization that, they need to turn things around against their rival, and coming with that comes hand in hand with being able to play for a Big Ten championship. I think when you look at his record, certainly is impressive. The one thing that you can see, Ryan Day has not had, and I think maybe there's one exception, or maybe one you could throw in. They lost a game at home against Oregon the year after the pandemic. And right after that game, he made some difficult coaching changes in midseason as far as responsibilities go. So he's shown that he's willing to make the tough decisions when it comes to personnel, meaning coaching personnel. Certainly what he's done at developing quarterbacks, even through his days as an assistant coach here, is very impressive. But I think he publicly has put out a personality that really has made him an easy person for fans to enjoy. But, the whole thing with Michigan in the last 3 years is a real thing, and he knows that, and he's, he lives it and is aware of it.
We're talking with Paul Keels, play-by-play voice for Ohio State football. Paul, speaking of coaching changes, both in responsibility and in titles, one of the bigger offseason moves for Ohio State was bringing in Chip Kelly to be the offensive coordinator. Kind of a two-part question here on Chip Kelly. A, how much different do you expect the offense to be under Chip Kelly? And B, how has he been received? And I guess how does he fit in Columbus so far?
Well, how different it's going to be, we're all anxious to see. And the thing that's been impressive in listening to what Chip has talked about, and what Ryan Day has talked about in their approach, is the emphasis on getting the running game where it needs to be. Most people think about Chip Kelly and the high-flying passing offenses that he's had, but being able to establish the run. What's different about it all is the fact that this is the one person that I think you could see Ryan Day relinquish more of the offensive play calling abilities as opposed to anybody else that he would have hired. Even though there previously had been offensive coordinators, it really was Ryan Day for the most part that was kind of serving in that role. This is one that, people have used the term, it'll allow him to be more of a CEO. You still can't see that he's going to not have his hands all over what goes on with the quarterbacks and with the offense as far as the play calling. But as the season goes on, certainly it's going to be easy to think and to guess. What we'll see is more of a Chip Kelly influence than Ryan Day, allowing him. I mean, think about it. He played for Chip Kelly at New Hampshire. He worked for him with the Eagles and with the 49ers. So there's a comfort factor with him that would not exist with anybody else.
So let me ask you, and maybe identity crisis is too strong, but you are prolific outside the numbers, but you arguably boast the best tandem, certainly in the conference, at least production-wise. With playing to Will Howard's strengths, if in fact he wins the job with run action and his ability to move within the pocket, could you see Ohio State not being as dynamic outside the numbers for the sake of playing to your strengths and controlling lines of scrimmage for the long haul?
There's still going to be a need to have to be dynamic outside the numbers, and especially when you consider the group they have at receiver with Emeka Ibuka and Carnell Tate, Brandon Ennis, and a very highly regarded incoming freshman, Jeremiah Smith. The thing that they've been missing really since J.T. Barrett is a legitimate quarterback run threat. Kyle McCord did not bring that last year. C.J. Stroud really only showed it in his very last game against Georgia in a loss in the playoffs. So as well as, for all of the records C.J. Stroud set throwing the football, him running was not a big part of it. And you could say that maybe it wasn't necessarily needed. But you certainly saw last year the difference in not having a threat of running at quarterback with the guys they have now, not even just Will Howard, but Devin Brown, certainly with the two true freshmen they have in Julian Sayin and Aaron Nolan. There's the threat that the quarterback is one who can really hurt teams running the football. That's something they had with J.T. Barrett. It's something they had with Justin Fields. It's something they had all the way back with Craig Krenzel when they won a national championship. So that's the one thing that certainly needs to be different. And the offensive line is part of that as well. But you can't, to your original question, though, certainly they've got the weapons to be dynamic outside. And trying to search for balance is probably how they achieve all of that.
Paul, what's an area of this team that you're interested in that maybe you're not hearing people talk about enough?
One of the interesting ones that doesn't get mentioned a lot is what's going to happen with linebackers. They lost two linebackers to graduation or eligibility expiration, let's say, that played an awful lot of football in Tommy Eichenberg and Steel Chambers. Cody Simon, who has started at times, is a guy that's going to handle one of the spots. The other interesting player and spot will be Sonny Styles, a young man from right here in the Columbus area, incredible athlete, played a lot of a safety position, but he's kind of grown into being a linebacker, and he's pretty much battling with C.J. Hicks. His transition to linebacker is going to be an interesting one to watch, mostly because this is a kid, even as a true freshman, and he's a kid who reclassified, so he came a year early when he should have been a high school senior. But he's got such great athletic gifts. It's going to be interesting to watch and see how he adjusts to the linebacker position and helping that defense make plays.
Is this team built not to look at those away games? I get it, Michigan is at the end, and that doesn't matter where that game is played. But, Penn State and Oregon looming. How do you avoid kind of the look around? I get to stay one game at a time, but lofty expectations to stay in the moment.
Well, when you talk about away games, the good thing is they only have 4 of them. Two of them are in tough spots. At Oregon, which will be, obviously a big challenge. At Penn State, which is never easy. At Michigan State, who's kind of trying to reload. And then they play Northwestern at Wrigley Field. But because they've not been able to achieve all of the goals and their main goal, especially at the end of the season, this is a team that certainly knows. And you hear the coach speak and you hear all of that, and you can look at the non-conference games and, see how undazzling that is. They were supposed to play at Washington this year, but obviously that was backed out of because of the anticipation of the conference expansion. But this is a team that certainly, and so many of these players that have been here before, they understand what it's like to come up short. So you like the chances that they understand, yeah, they have to take care of Akron in week 1 and then Western Michigan in week 2 and so on and so on. But they have to do all of that to be in the position to achieve what they want, what they want at the end of the year.
That's Paul Keels, play-by-play voice for Ohio State football. Paul, we appreciate your time and good luck this year, except for on October 26th.
I understand. Sounds good, guys.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank you, Paul. That's
All
Paul
right.
Keels, play-by-play voice for Ohio State football. And that's the show for today. If you missed anything, we had a couple of guests run a little over as well. Make sure you get the podcast everywhere you get podcasts. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla. We will be back tomorrow on Hurrdat Sports Radio.
See you. Have a good day. Love you.